Hello guys, it's me, Jonathan Manuel, and we'll have the TYT election coverage continue shortly.
All right, calm down. Okay. All right, Wes and I are here to join us later. Because we've got two different things going on. We've got debate, which is going to start in about 25 minutes, and we have some elections. Okay, so Wes, I'm ready for breaking news. Marco Rubio has won his second election. Marco Rubio has won Puerto Rico. We are calling it Marco Rubio. With his second victory. He's got Minnesota and Puerto Rico, perhaps the two most disparate elections we've had. Right? But he got them both. So he's got a lot of diversity in his wins, but that's about it. So he got slaughtered yesterday. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the bigger election today is Maine for the Democrats. That's the only one that remains. That also the polls close in 24 minutes. So I want to give us your guess right now. Yeah, I mean, I think Bernie's going to win. The question is, there's a lot of questions. How close? Yada yada. And so let me give you guys context, and then we'll get Wes's guess. Hillary Clinton had a 10-point lead in Kansas in the last poll they did, which was 2 weeks before the voting. So that's a long time, right? Mm-hmm. But still, okay, hey, not bad, right? Now let me see if I can find you. Yes, here it is. Now, the actual vote yesterday was 67.7 for Bernie Sanders, 32.3 for Hillary Clinton. So she lost by 35. She was favored by 10 and lost by 35. Okay. Now, by the time the voting happened, she wasn't exactly favored. A lot of people thought Bernie Sanders was going to win Kansas. But I don't know anyone who said he'd win it by 35. And I don't know anyone who's giving him credit for that large a victory. I do know a lot of people giving Hillary Clinton a lot of credit for the size of her southern victories, including Super Tuesday and then Louisiana yesterday. And by the way, that's fair. She won by 48 in Louisiana, which is a crushing victory. And Louisiana has more delegates, so she actually picked up more delegates, not nonsense bullshit super delegates, but real delegates. She picked up more delegates yesterday than Bernie Sanders did. So you got to give her credit for that. You got to point that out. But I gave you that as context for, I don't know, if the polls are off by 45 points, who knows what's going to happen in any election. That's true. Right? My guess is he's going to win it by 10. Win it by 10. Okay. That would be closer to his Nebraska win. His Nebraska win was, here, let me give it to you. I want to be exact here. If we can find it in time. Here we go. 57 to 42. Wow, that's also a 25-point win. Okay, now the number of delegates there are not 15 points. Look at that bias. You're right, a 15-point lead. My bad. I got so blown away by the Kansas numbers, even though I'd seen them earlier. They're unbelievable numbers. Yeah. Especially the way that the press has portrayed the campaign in the last 2 weeks has been, Clinton's the nominee. And everybody else just seems to be quiet, and we're not really going to pay attention to anything they say or do. Wes, we haven't talked about that at all on the show. I know you have. Listen, and I'm not declared for either candidate. Mm-hmm. But I can there was a lot more attention for Bernie in the national press in the run-up to the election. Mm-hmm. And once the primaries started, even after his victories, I felt like the coverage dropped down. Mm-hmm. Before South Carolina. Yeah. It's not within dispute. So yesterday, as we were doing the show live, before the voting began, we predicted if Bernie wins 2 out of 3 states, if he loses any of those states, if he loses 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3, the headlines will be it's over, right? But if he wins 2 out of 3, the headlines will still be dismissive. That was our prediction. That was a good prediction, right? And accurate. Oh boy, was that accurate! So the Washington Post headline that we read for folks live on the air after the results came in was Ted Cruz wins 2 states, Hillary Clinton wins Louisiana. No mention of Bernie Sanders at all. Fox News had a much larger headline putting out all the states. They're like, and Sanders wins Nebraska. Like, what happened to Kansas? Kansas got called first. They just refused to put Kansas in the headline. So that was amazing. I assume it's an oversight, but that's a lot of oversights back to back to back. And then Politico. Let me see if I can find that for you guys, because I tweeted it out, and then there was more dismissive ones afterwards. But this one was here it is. Sorry, the Political one right after the election was Bernie bogs down Hillary. Like, what do you? By winning, you're being a pain in the ass, right?
I stepped in some Bernie.
Yeah,
that's why I'm moving so slowly.
Yeah, and it's not like, hey, Bernie wins and has a chance of winning. It's like Bernie's annoying Hillary by continuing to win. Yeah, that's true. That is annoying. If you lose, it's totally annoying. Right? Now, again, yesterday she picked up more delegates. It's just the way that it is covered is so disproportionate to what happened that it's like almost unbelievable. Like, I know it's not conspiratorial, but it is so thorough that someone could be forgiven for thinking it is conspiratorial, right? Which it isn't. Okay.
No, I don't think it is either. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's really hard to be an insurgent candidate because you didn't go to every barbecue and fish fry for 20 years. You don't know about the kids. You don't know about the details of their life, and you don't know the press the same way.
Yeah, and the Washington press, I think this is my main theory, okay, is that they all live in the same bubble. And so in that bubble, Bernie Sanders never had a chance of winning. Anybody who thought he had a chance of winning is a moron, is a political knife, right? And should be dismissed out of hand. Now, if you try to show them numbers and polls and results, they become further convinced that you don't know what you're doing, because they're like, oh, you're conspiratorial to show me numbers where Bernie's winning. But I don't how can I prove it to you, right? Right. So now the thing is, at this point, I want you to be clear on this. He's not winning. Okay, she has a lot more delegates, even if you ignore the super delegates. But it is a competitive race where he's won a lot of states. It's nowhere near over. And Super Tuesday, for example, was 7-4. She won the southern states she was supposed to win, but she won them. She won them sizably, and she won them larger than I would have expected, right? And so she picked up a lot of delegates that way. You should talk about that. But you should also talk about, like, hey, we didn't know who was going to win Colorado or Minnesota, and it turned out it was Bernie Sanders. We weren't sure who was going to win Massachusetts. It turned out it was Hillary Clinton. It was a narrow victory, but a really good one for her. Right? Just give us balance. Give us reality. Instead of like, oh, Bernie's bogging down Hillary by maybe beating her. Yeah, but that's not the right framing for a competitive race. So
I guarantee next week, by the end of the week, Bernie can win everything between now and next Sunday, and there will be calls. It's time for Sanders to get out of the race.
And there's no question.
It's going to happen.
There's no question. And then, so if that's the case, it's how is it not maddening, the disparity? Because as Wes has pointed out, there's so many things that an insurgent candidate has to overcome. All the things he just mentioned, like most people never talk about.
It's miraculous. Sanders gotten as far as he has. I mean, straight up, I believe in democratic socialism. I believe in that he's gotten this far.
So
is amazing.
Hey, old friend Jennifer Granholm on TV. Okay, she's with the Clinton campaign, but I used to work with her at Current TV and really like and respect her. Ben Jealous is also on, so he's gonna seriously go to bat for Bernie Sanders as he has been. So anyway, so you've got the fact that he doesn't know everybody on the ground where the Clintons have been there for 20 years, etc. You got the biggest factor of all, name recognition. Everybody knows Hillary Clinton, and if you're not knee deep in politics, almost no one knew Bernie Sanders. Okay, when we started this process, we know him for 40, 50 years, but the overwhelming majority of American voters had no idea who Bernie Sanders was. To overcome that by itself is amazing. Yet, add on top of that, the entire Democratic establishment, not a little bit, not 60-40, the entire Democratic establishment, including the DNC, is clearly on Hillary Clinton's side. And then on top of that, you had all the media hates you, thinks you should be dismissed even before the voting begins, and finds it insane to even talk about you having a chance of winning, even though you closed a 50-point lead nationwide. Like, there's nothing you can do to get the media to say, oh, we should take Bernie Sanders seriously. With all of those disadvantages, Bernie Sanders somehow is still competitive, and this weekend has already won 2 out of 3 states, and tonight he might win 3 out of 4 states overall for the weekend. And so it's very fair to talk about Hillary Clinton's delegate lead. It's not at all fair to talk about her superdelegates. That is an undemocratic process that will never stand, which leads me to point number 2, which is the media keeps counting superdelegates. Almost every count I see has superdelegates in it. But wait a minute, you must suck at your job, because how do you not know after covering politics all these years? For example, in 2008, dozens of Hillary Clinton superdelegates, once Barack Obama won the voting, switched over and voted for Barack Obama, because they're like, oh, that's nonsense. Obviously, I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama won. So, yeah, I pledged for you. That was my show of support for you in the beginning, but we're not at the beginning. You lost, so I'm going to vote for Obama. That's what the superdelegates did in 2008. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So how can you count them? They haven't voted yet. Like, they voted at the end. So counting them ahead of time, it indicates you don't understand politics, or you are monumentally biased. And that bias, again, doesn't come from a cigar-filled room where they all conspire together. It comes from the fact that they're all in the same room. They're in that same bubble in Washington.
No, they have dinners together, lunch together. I mean, it was like that scandal over the weekend where they hacked into Trump's voicemail, and you could hear all these journalists, left, right, ever. Hey, oh yeah, we're gonna have lunch. We're gonna do this. They like each other. They hang out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how it works, and he's not a part of that, and it makes it that much harder for him to get any traction. Add to that you've got, look, we live in an oligarchy, and he's telling the people with money, I'm going to take some of your money away from you. Even bigger, because who's paying for all the advertising?
Given all of that, the distance that Bernie Sanders has made up, the number of states he has won, and sometimes the enormity of his victories in Kansas. This guy who had no chance and was given no chance won by 35 points last night. So, given all of that, what he has done is nearly miraculous. And how does the media treat it? Instead of saying, wow, isn't that amazing? Even if he loses, wasn't that amazing? It's nothing. It's nothing. Move along here. Why doesn't he just get out already? God, this guy's so annoying. Part of the reason he's so annoying is because he's coming for them. He's coming for that oligarchy. You'd think that the major media organizations, top 6 organizations that own most of the media in America,
90%,
are part of the oligarchy. Well, then you didn't get clued into what's happening here. They are part of that power structure. They love that power structure. They get their power and their wealth from that power structure. So, of course, they hate Bernie Sanders. So that's why they won't come on TV and go, wow! Instead of, it's no big deal. We always knew it. He's in the white states, the Bernie states, the weird states. We always knew it. I mean, what he's done is not interesting or important. Let's just make sure that he gets out of the race immediately. Gee, I wonder why you're covering it that way. Okay.
Well, it's also with the superdelegate count. That's a choice by the media organizations to say those are delegates cast for us. But it's also the Clinton campaign pushing that narrative in because, look, it's something maybe a lot of people don't want to hear, but people are sheep, and they want to go with a winner. And if they project a winner before votes have actually been cast, they're tilting the voting in favor of the winner. It's just that simple.
Yep. So that is absolutely true. Now, you said you're split on the candidates, and I know that we've talked about it in the past. What I would love from you, if we have time later, is for you to tell us, to give your best shot at a Hillary Clinton defense. Meaning, here's why you should vote for Hillary Clinton.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, I do. Because I want the audience to I want the audience to get a sense of, but a real thing, right? Because you're less pro Bernie Sanders than the rest of us, right? So I want to give it our best shot at giving a good defense of Hillary Clinton. All right, now, by the way, we got the debate and Maine closing in about 11 minutes. I want you to go tell your friends, tell your family, tell Randy Gonzalez that they should watch all of that right here, okay? tytnetwork.com/live. Tweet it out, put it on Facebook, do what you're going to do, and get everybody to come on over and watch. As you can tell, in all of these, we have a ton of fun. Later on, I'll read some of your tweets. Obviously, during the debate, we're going to do play-by-play coverage, and we'll tell you what they're saying and what they're actually meaning. And afterwards, we'll have best line of the debate, worst line of debate, winner, loser, etc. Right? Although the winner-loser category has become
it's going to be a pretty brief description.
That's right. It's not like when we started with the Republicans, there was 9 of them up there.
And I got to say, I'm not as, even though I'm obviously going to vote for the Democratic candidate, I'm just not as excited about this debate as it was, last week's, because, this is going to be a sober debate.
Yeah.
About actual policy and real issues.
Wes, what do you think are the chances that they talk about their genitalia tonight in the Democratic debate?
About zero. About zero. There's always a possibility. But I think it's pretty low. It's pretty low.
No, but think about it, right? So we were joking around when the Republican debate happened and Trump started talking about his dick. We were saying, what are the chances that Barack Obama would mention his penis during a presidential debate?
Look, if this whole election season has been anything, it's that, look, you may not agree with Barack Obama, but the guy has class.
Yeah,
there's no question.
Yeah, and then we started thinking about different people, like the idea of Bernie Sanders mentioning his dick. I mean, it's preposterous, right? And then I just thought of it because you said this. I don't want anybody to take offense. We are talking about genitalia. We've talked about a lot of dicks, right? Could you imagine Hillary Clinton mentioning her vagina? It is so unthinkable. It is the most unthinkable thing I've ever thought. In fact, that's why I couldn't even think of it until this moment when we were saying genitalia, etc. But if she did that, people would be like, a heart attack.
That would be a heart attack.
Right, and they would say she was the crassest person in the world. How could you possibly talk about that?
But everybody's kind of said that about Trump. But
that's true.
But they're at the same time.
But they've gotten
they don't
used to
care.
It. Right.
They don't care. And the reason they don't care is because these same media organizations that are determining who gets what coverage, they ran his show for years. And that show really, that's the reason he's here. The first couple episodes, back when they had people who graduated from good business schools and good colleges, and it's the elite, the eventual elite, and he took them all and made them look like fools. And he did it over and over and over again. So the people in America are just like, oh, these corporate people who are just raining shit on us, this guy's humiliated all of them at one time or another.
Yeah,
so they don't care. They don't care about his demeanor.
No, they certainly don't. But and he does get a different standard, right? Almost anyone else talking about their genitalia, talking about anything, people would be outraged. It might be an immediate disqualifier. But with Trump, you think par for the course. More Trump being Trump.
I'm still waiting for one of them to throw out a your mother joke.
I don't rule that out at all. At all.
I mean,
right?
That's where it's got to eventually go.
No, I'm nearly positive at some point Donald Trump is going to say,
your mother didn't complain about these hands.
That's pretty good. No, the rubber and glue thing,
No.
I'm rubber, you're glue, whenever you say it bounces off me and sticks on you. I think he might literally say that.
I can see Rubio saying that. For sure.
Well, I can't see Rubio saying much in about 10 days because he might be out of the race. So we'll talk about how disastrous Rubio's performance was as well in a second. First, let me just note that it's Wes and I tonight. We just have a Democratic debate where there will be no genitalia talk, and we just have one state now because Puerto Rico has already called for Marco Rubio. Maine, that's coming up. So this is a chow coverage. Okay, so you guys at home, most of you don't know this, of course. There's no reason because most of you don't speak Chinese. Xiao in Chinese means small.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And my kids love it. Anything that's small is like xiao. So this is just little xiao TYT coverage. Okay?
No, when I came in here today and I came in, I'm like, who else is doing the show? They're like, dude, you're doing it alone. And I was like, I can see that today. I can see it. That's possible.
So was it a relief when you found out I'm also here?
It's always a relief. It's always. I still remember doing the show alone. Remember when we were doing it from 2 to 4 in the morning?
Yeah.
I was on for a week straight once alone. And I just remember, that was, on the radio, so it wasn't as stressful as being on video. But I was stressed out. every night coming home, like, what the hell am I going to talk about in another 10 minutes? with whatever random person they can put on the phone.
Okay, well, that's funny because I'll just tell you a quick story from the past. When I was doing my original public access show 21 years ago, right? And on show number 5, 7, one of the early shows, I used to go half an hour, no breaks, right? It's public access, no commercials, right? And I'd have a bunch of cutouts in front of me from newspapers. So, like, I have papers here, right? But they're printouts these days. In the old days, I would literally cut something out of the paper, watch the Post USA Today, and I'd put it in order on a pile, and I'd go one after another. And going a half an hour by yourself with no calls, no nothing, when you've never done it before, and you got to look at the camera, and that's really unnerving if you haven't done it before, right? Is not easy. And I ran out of topics, and I was like, oh. And that panic from that day haunts me to this day, decades later. That's why we will way over prepare for a show. That's why we won't get to so many stories that we've already produced and gotten ready. Because I'm not going to have that moment again.
No, that's a bad moment.
So
there's Anderson Cooper's on, and he's looks like he's introducing himself.
Yeah, he is. We'll get to him in a second. We get to it when the candidates finally come out and start speaking. Because this is a lot of promotional BS. When, in fact, we could be promoting us instead. ShopTYT.com. Okay, I had Pittsburgh on earlier in the week. Now it's New York's turn. And by the way, the Bernie So Punk posters are back. They're back. The T-shirts, the posters, all of that is at ShopTYT.com. Oh, I was supposed to take a break before the debate. We still have time. Can we take a 2-minute break? Are you guys? No, they're coming out. I screwed that up. Okay. Oh well. We will. When they take their first break, we'll take our first break. So among the 100 questions that I want to ask you, first of all, when your dad was in the debates, Democratic debates, did he ever consider talking about a genocide? Or
that was never the possibility of even coming up was impossible.
No, kidding aside, one day, I'm not sure we're going to have time today, I'd love to talk to you about the debate prep.
It was intensive. It was intensive. There's like pros they bring in. They're all big solid names, and they're people you've seen in previous administrations, and they sit you down and they grill you for like 3 days on stuff. And it's all trivia and bullshit. I mean, the candidates don't know half of what they're talking about. In real terms, they know like what to hit on. It's like, as somebody who's not following politics incredibly closely on the minutia, the whole Republican talk of he was with the Gang of Eight. He was part of the Gang of Eight. It's like the average American is like, what the fuck is the Gang of Eight?
I know.
What are you talking about?
See, that's why they're doing a moment of silence for Nancy Reagan right now. We are not. No. Now, Nancy had upsides and downsides, and it's always a shame when anyone dies. But I don't want to get too into it, right? The only thing I'm going to say about Nancy Reagan passing away today is I can't believe that they ran the most powerful country on earth based on this drone.
Yeah, stunning.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But anyway, she definitely had upsides. And it's always a shame when anyone passes. Okay. Now, in terms of one other thing that I definitely wanted to ask you before the debate began. So, since the polling, for example, in Kansas was so off, 45 points off, right? Now, it's a caucus, so it's definitely weird, and it's
caucus is always going to be skewed away from what the polls are.
Right.
Because it's the people in the room who can turn it.
Yeah. So,
but also, it's only 30,000 people really voted in Kansas, so when you got that small a number, the polling just could have been off.
Yeah. So, do you think that has any effect on what you think might happen in the larger states that are coming up, like Michigan, Florida, Ohio, since the polling right now has Hillary Clinton up significantly in those states?
I think he's still got a chance to pull it off. I mean, look, the one thing you can tell by looking at the returns is, and this is with every state in every primary, the number of people voting is really small. So if you can get your friends, your family to go to the polling place with you, you can really turn the tide. I mean, in states like, I think we won Oklahoma by like 20 votes or something. I mean, it's small margins. Think about how close the margin was in Iowa or Massachusetts. It's a matter of getting your people to the polls.
That's why I say it actually, I think it is a fair point that if Elizabeth Warren had come out and endorsed Bernie Sanders earlier, he might have won both Massachusetts and Iowa.
I don't know.
But you know, the other thing is, people, like, you think that might affect the momentum a lot. Wow, if he won Iowa and New Hampshire, and then on Super Tuesday he won Massachusetts and Colorado and Minnesota and Oklahoma, right? But the reality might be that we're still naive. That the media would have called it losses no matter what. Like even if he'd won Iowa and Massachusetts instead of barely losing.
If he would have won Iowa and Massachusetts, the story would be different right now.
You think, under any normal circumstances, it would be dramatically different, right? It's just two establishment candidates, John Kerry versus Richard Gephardt.
Well,
it'll make all the difference, right?
But they're trying to play a very narrow game right now because the Clinton people understand there's not a lot of Hillary Clinton. There's not that kind of excitement out there. So they can't really. They don't want to alienate the Sanders voters massively. They want to win, and they want to be able to say, "Hey, no, come out and vote for us this fall." So they're playing a very cautious game with Sanders, and they're going to let the press beat up on Sanders. They're not going to do it themselves, probably from here on out.
Yeah. Okay, so now, here we go. Debate has begun.
To meet with a number of residents of Flint, had a town meeting in Flint, and I have to tell you, what I heard and what I saw literally shattered me, and it was beyond belief that children in Flint, Michigan, in the United States of America in the year 2016 are being poisoned. That is clearly not what this country should be about. As Anderson indicated, there's a lot of blame to go around. And one of the points that I have made is I believe the governor of this state should understand that his dereliction of duty was irresponsible. He should resign. But more importantly, what is happening in Flint to a lesser degree is happening throughout this country. In recent years, we have seen a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, an increase in income and wealth inequality, and all over this country. Middle-class families are struggling, cities and towns are struggling in order to provide basic services. Among many other things, we need to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our roads, and our bridges. The wealthiest country in the history of the world has got to get its priorities right, take care of the people, no more tax breaks for billionaires.
Thank you, Senator. I would have done more specific, like, hey, if you do a tax break, this is the consequences, right? And in fact, in Michigan, there's a great case to
Well,
make.
I'll start by saying
tax
amen
breaks
to that.
for corporations is what
We are here in Flint.
We ran out of money.
I'm very grateful that my request that we hold this debate be held here so we can continue to shine a very bright spotlight on what has happened in this city. I agree. The governor should resign or be recalled, and we should support the efforts of citizens attempting to achieve that. But that is not enough. We have to focus on what must be done to help the people of Flint. I support 100% the efforts by your senators and members of Congress to get the money from the federal government in order to begin the work that must occur to fix the infrastructure. The state should also be sending money immediately to help this city. I know the state of Michigan has a rainy day fund for emergencies. What is more important than the health and well-being of the people, particularly children? It is raining lead in Flint, and the state is derelict in not coming forward with the money that is required. what we need to do to help the children and the people when I have a little more time, because that's just as important as fixing the pipes.
We're going to have a lot of time for that. We want to begin tonight with the people of Flint themselves. This is Mickey Wade. She's a public housing program manager and the mother of 2 kids. She says she's currently undecided and has a question that both of you will be able to weigh in on.
The water has impacted our lives in such a way that living comfortably in our home isn't the same anymore. The constant drives to pick up water just so my children can wash their hair, to wash our fruits and vegetables, and to brush our teeth is incredibly difficult. Once the pipes are replaced, I'm not for sure if I will be comfortable ever drinking the water. If elected president, what course will you take to regain my trust in the government?
Secretary Clinton, we'll begin with you.
Well, Nikki, it's a very fair question because your government at all levels have let you and your children and the people of Flint down. So I think there are several things. All the repair work that is being done, and Mayor Weaver announced a program that we support to begin to help train people in Flint to be able to do some of this work, to distribute the water. Everything that is done has to be triple checked to regain your trust and to hold those who are responsible for fixing the pipes and delivering the clean water, which, as you said, you bathe in it, you drink it, you wash food in it, you do everything with it. Every one of us should have to just run through in our minds how we use water every single day to understand the pressures and the real pain that families are going through. So I will make sure as president that I double and triple check. I will work with elected officials who I trust, like your mayor, like your senators, like your member of Congress, so that we can assure you that when it's fixed, you can trust it. You deserve nothing less.
Secretary Clinton, let me follow up with you on that. The people here, they still can't drink the water in their own homes, as you well know. They can't be in a lot better shape than the people here, and they are desperate for accountability. Like the Republicans, look at what happened. Right? Can you give any specific about what you could do if you were president right now that would make Ms. Wade's life better and life better for people here?
Well, I support what President Obama is doing. He called for and got accountability from officials at the EPA who should have done more to make sure the state was doing its job. He has expanded Medicaid to begin the process of helping kids particularly get the health care they need. He's also ordered that there be a Head Start program.
Here's the programs we're
When
going
it
to do.
comes
She
to the
just told
water
you what
itself,
she's going to do.
we are supporting a program that Mayor Weaver announced today, Flint Water Works, to actually pay people
you guys are the ones that are in favor
not
of government, and government let us down.
people here.
No, the Republicans who hate government are the ones who bungle the government, and they let you down.
I would do even more of that. As president, what we were able to put together was a beginning. As president, I would concentrate resources on this city for economic development, for more jobs, as we fix the water and provide the health and education interventions that children need.
Senator Sanders, for Ms. Wade specific.
What is going on is a disgrace beyond belief. President of the United States, this is what I would do. Is if local government does not have the resources, if state government, for whatever reason, refuses to act, children in America should not be poisoned. Federal government comes in, federal government acts.
That's fair, but it kind of lets the Republican governors off the hook for screwing up their own states.
What is absolutely incredible to me is that water rates have soared in Flint. You are paying 3 times more for poisoned water than I'm paying in Burlington, Vermont for clean water. First thing you do is you say people are not paying a water bill for poisoned water.
I withdraw that they has better prepared lines. It's not like he thought of it at the moment. He prepared that as well.
Retroactive. Second of all, to ease anxiety, CDC has got to come in here and examine every child and adult in this community in terms of the amount of lead they may have. Thirdly, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, We have got to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, our water systems. I've got a bill for $1 trillion, creates 13 million jobs, rebuilding Flint, Michigan, and communities all over this country.
Thank you, Senator. More on infrastructure shortly, but I want to follow up with you. This crisis in Flint, as you know, as everybody in this room knows, was created by the government. Your policies are about expanding government. Why should people from Flint trust that more government is the answer?
Well, that's a good point, Anderson. I suppose they can trust the corporations who have destroyed Flint by a disastrous trade policy, which have allowed them to shut down plants in Flint and move to China and Mexico. We can trust them, I'm sure. Or maybe, maybe Anderson, tell you what, maybe we should let Wall Street come in and run the city of Flint. Because we know their honesty and integrity has done so much for the American people. Look, we live in a democracy. And I'm not the last person to deny the government is failing in many respects. But at the end of the day, I will trust the people to create a government that works for them rather than Wall Street or corporate America.
Yeah, he's killing it. Oh, that's strong. Yeah, that's an energy.
Secretary Clinton, you've now both called for the governor to resign. I believe that's new for you. Previously, you had not called for that, but you're calling for that tonight. It's easy to blame the Republican governor, Rick Snyder. But the federal government also dropped the ball here. According to Section 1414 of the Safe Drinking Water Act, the EPA has to step in and take action when a state is informed about water problems and doesn't do anything for 30 days, as the state here didn't do. The EPA knew for months and months, never warned the people of Flint not to drink the water. As president, would you fire the head of the EPA?
Well, I think that the people here in the region who knew about this and failed to follow what you just said rightly, the law required, have been eliminated from the EPA.
So far, one person has resigned.
Well, I don't know how high it goes. I would certainly be launching an investigation. I think there is one.
Right.
I was told that, some of the higher-ups were pushing to get changes that were not happening. So I would have a full investigation, determine who knew what when.
Some people
and yes, people should be fired.
So I don't think
how far up the chain, I don't know. But as far as it goes, they should be relieved because they failed this city. But let me just add this, Anderson. This is not the only place where this kind of action is needed. We have a lot of communities right now in our country where the level of toxins in the water, including lead, are way above what anybody should tolerate.
New York Times just called Maine for Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders wins Maine. Based on the numbers I'm seeing here, comfortably, the 10% prediction by Wes looks like it's way conservative. He appears to have a 30-point lead.
Whoa!
So that's huge. But the amazing thing is, almost no one is. I know you see me looking down. Sorry, guys, we'll get back to the debate in 1 second. I couldn't find it anywhere. No one's covering it. Like, it's amazing.
It's Maine, though.
No, I get it, but like 538 that's all they do is cover these elections. They're off today. They won't even cover them. So it's I don't know. It's maddening. But anyway, he crushed tonight.
Would make the point that how does it happen in the wealthiest country in the history of the world? What are our priorities when, among others, Republicans today are fighting for hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the wealthiest people? How do we have so much money available to go to war in Iraq and spend trillions of dollars, but somehow not have enough money, not just for Flint? Secretary is right. There are communities all over this country. It's not just infrastructure, it is education. Detroit's public school system is collapsing.
Thank you, Senator.
Anderson, the bottom line is, and what my campaign is changing our national priorities. We need a government that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors.
I want to go to Leanne Walters. This is Leanne Walters. She was one of the first people to report problems with the water in Flint. One of her twin boys stopped growing. Her daughter lost her hair. She says she's undecided and has a question for both of you to answer, but we'll start with Senator Sanders. Ms. Walter?
After my family, the city of Flint, and the children in D.C. were poisoned by lead, will you make a personal promise to me right now that as president in your first 100 days in office, you will make it a requirement that all public water systems must remove all lead service lines throughout the entire United States and notification made to the citizens that have said service lines?
I will make a personal promise to you that the EPA and the EPA director that I appoint will make sure that every water system in the United States of America is tested and that the people of those communities know the quality of the water that they're drinking, and that we are going to have a plan to rebuild water systems in this country that are unsafe for drinking.
Let me just point out, for accuracy's sake, there are 10 million lead service pipes delivering water to people all across this country tonight. Secretary Clinton?
Well, I agree completely. I want to go further, though. I want us to have an absolute commitment to getting rid of lead wherever it is, because it's not only in water systems, it's also in soil, and it's in lead paint that is found mostly in older homes. That's why 500,000 children today have lead in their bodies. So I want to do exactly what you said. We will commit to a priority to change the water systems, and we will commit within 5 years to remove lead from everywhere. We were making progress on this in the 1990s. I worked with then Senator Obama to get more money, more support to do more to remove lead. That has, unfortunately, been, in many ways, moved to a lower priority. I will elevate it, and I will do everything I can. Water, soil, and paint. We're going to get rid of it.
Thank you, Secretary. I want to go to my colleague, Don Leonard.
Thank you very much.
Tonight you called for the resignation or for Governor Snyder to be recalled. There are residents of this city who want to see criminal charges brought against those who are responsible. Do you think people should go to jail?
Well, that's going to be up to the legal system, Don. I mean, I can't, standing here, I don't have all the facts, but people should be held accountable.
He's going to say, I'm going to put him in jail.
I'm not sure. It leads to resignation or recall if you're in political office, if it leads to civil penalties, if it leads to criminal responsibility. There has to be an absolute accountability, and I will support whatever the outcome of those investigations are.
Senator Sanders, do you think people should go to jail?
Well, I agree. We can't sit up here. I can't sit up here and make judgment over whether or not somebody committed a criminal act. But I will tell you this, that after an investigation, if people in fact were found to have committed a criminal act, I talked to a mother. Imagine this for a second. A mother who had a bright 7-year-old gregarious girl doing well in school. 2 years later, that child is now in special education, intellectual capability significantly deteriorated. That is a crime against that child and the people of Flint, and clearly people are going to have to be held accountable.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Secretary. I want to turn now to Brent Nichols, the editor of the Flint Journal. We'll come out as strong as this debate.
I was still stronger than Hillary Clinton. Of course.
Brent?
Who, by the way, would have known the name of
Secretary
that
Clinton, it took this water crisis for politicians like yourselves to notice we are in a city in trouble. You've only both recently started talking about Flint, holding campaign events here in just the past few weeks. Secretary Clinton, you've even made the crisis the centerpiece of a new campaign ad. Why should the people of Flint believe that you aren't just using this crisis to score political points?
Well, I think because throughout my public career, I have been evening the odds for people in every way that I could. I started out with the Children's Defense Fund. I worked throughout my time as a young lawyer, as a person, an activist, certainly in Arkansas, then in the White House, to try to fix problems wherever I saw them. And this problem is one that is particularly outrageous and painful at the same time. So when I heard about it, I immediately sent people here to find out what was going on. It was almost unbelievable. We have this problem in other places, but we don't say that it was actually caused by decisions made by public officials in positions of authority, as this one was. Then when I talked to the mayor, I basically said, What can I do to help? Then when I came here and I met with some of the mothers and met their children and heard their stories, I'm just determined to do whatever I can. So I have put together resources from the private and philanthropic communities to help provide a bridge, because you've got to get the federal money, you've got to get the state money, but I'm going to do everything I can, and I will be with Flint all the way through this crisis in whatever capacity I am. And if I'm president, it will always be a priority for action from me.
Bryn has a follow-up. Senator Sanders, what about you? Your first visit to Flint as a presidential candidate was just over a week ago. That's almost 5 months after the people here were told to stop drinking the water. What took you so long?
Well, first of all, it's not quite accurate. I was here long before that. And I'll tell you what I did. What I did is meet very quietly in Detroit with parents and others who were impacted by this disaster. And the second thing that I did is hold a town meeting, which was as non-political as I could make it, for hundreds of people to tell me and the world through the media exactly what was happening here in Flint. I think the fear, and the legitimate fear of the people of Flint, is that at a certain point the TV cameras and CNN is going to disappear. And then people are going to be left struggling in order to live in a safe and healthy community. All I can say is, if you check my record going back a long time, I have stood with those who are hurting. I have stood with those who have no money, and I have taken on virtually every powerful special interest in the United States of America. That's my record. I'm proud of it.
Thank you, Senator. This city is also facing a jobs crisis. 75% of Flint's manufacturing jobs have been lost in the last 25 years. In about the same amount of time, Michigan has lost 230,000 manufacturing jobs. I want to go to Tanisha Martin. She grew up here in Flint, but she now works in Detroit at the Shinola Watch Factory, which, as you know, is often held up as the blueprint for how to save American industry jobs. She says she's leaning towards Secretary Clinton, and she has a question for her.
A lot of members of my family worked in the auto industry here in Flint. That's ultimately what I wanted to do once I got out of school, but unfortunately I was unable to get any one of the big three. And that's why I now reside at Shinola. If you're elected president, what are you going to do to convince factories to keep the jobs here in the United States instead of sending them overseas to other countries?
Secretary.
I'm going to do what I think will work, which is both carrots and sticks. And let me talk about the carrots. We're going to have a very clear set of proposals and incentives for manufacturing so that we change the way that companies think about making investments again in America. I have a comprehensive manufacturing plan that I will be implementing. We're also going to invest more in infrastructure, as we both have said. It's woefully under-resourced. That will put a lot of people to work. I want to do more to help small businesses. They are the source of 2/3 of our jobs. We've got to help them start and grow, particularly minority and women-owned small businesses. We need to do more to help create clean energy as a source of good jobs. But I'm also going to go after companies. You know, when a company decides to leave, like Nabisco is leaving, and they've gotten tax benefits from Chicago and Illinois to stay there, I'm going to claw back those benefits. They're going to have to pay them back if they're leaving a place that actually invested in them. I'm also going to go after companies like Johnson Controls in Wisconsin. They came and got part of the bailout because they were an auto parts supplier. Now they want to move some of their headquarters to Europe. They're going to have to pay an exit fee. We're going to stop this kind of job exporting, and we're going to start importing and growing jobs again in our country.
Yeah, well, those are good proposals.
I'll let you. I am very glad that Secretary Clinton has discovered religion on this issue.
Like you lose half your capital.
But it's a little bit too late. Secretary Clinton supported virtually every one of these disastrous trade agreements written by corporate America.
Oh, that's tough. Look at this. Get personal.
NAFTA, supported by the Secretary, cost us 800,000 jobs nationwide, tens of thousands of jobs in the Midwest. Permanent normal trade relations with China cost us millions of jobs. Look, I was on a picket line in the early 1990s against NAFTA because you didn't need a PhD in economics to understand that American workers should not be forced to compete against people in Mexico making 25 cents an hour. And the reason that I was one of the first, not one of the last, to be in opposition to the TPP is that
not one of the
American
last.
workers should not be forced to compete against people in Vietnam today making a minimum wage of 65 cents an hour. Look, what we have got to do is tell corporate America that they cannot continue to shut down. We've lost 60,000 factories since 2001. They're going to start having to, if I'm president, invest in this country, not in China, not in Mexico. Senator Clinton.
Well, I'll tell you something else that Senator Sanders was against. He was against the auto bailout. In January of 2009, President-elect Obama asked everybody in the Congress to vote for the bailout. The money was there and had to be released in order to save the American auto industry and 4 million jobs and to begin the restructuring. We just had the best year that the auto industry has had in a long time. I voted to save the auto industry. He voted against the money that ended up saving the auto industry. I think that is a pretty big difference.
Well, if you were talking about the Wall Street bailout, where some of your friends destroyed this economy,
you know,
excuse me, I'm talking.
Let him run.
Wow. Oh, the Hillary people are going to go nuts over that. Who's sexist is sexist?
The whole story, Senator
Let me
Sanders.
tell my story, you tell yours.
I will.
Your story is for voting for every disastrous trade agreement and voting for corporate America. Did I vote against the Wall Street bailout? When billionaires on Wall Street destroyed this economy, they went to Congress and they said, oh, please, we'll be good boys, bail us out. You know what I said? I said, let the billionaires themselves bail out Wall Street. Shouldn't be the middle class of this country.
Okay, go.
Wait a minute. Wait, can I finish? You'll have your turn. All right, but ultimately, if you look at our records, I stood up to corporate America time and time again. I went to Mexico. I saw the lives of people who were working in American factories and making 25 cents an hour. I understood that these trade agreements were going to destroy the middle class of this country. I led the fight against us. That is one of the major differences that we have.
Well, if I could, to set the record straight, I voted against the only multinational trade agreement that came before me when I was in the Senate. It was called CAFTA. I came out against the TPP. After it was finished, I thought it was reasonable to actually know what was in it before I opposed it. I opposed it. Now let me get back to what happened in January of 2009.
Yeah, that's the most disingenuous.
The Bush administration negotiated the deal. Were there things in it that I didn't like? Would I have done it differently? Absolutely. But was the auto bailout money in it? The $350 billion that was needed to begin the restructuring of the auto industry? Yes, it was. So when I talk about Senator Sanders being a one-issue candidate, I mean very clearly, you have to make hard choices when you're in positions of responsibility. The two senators from Michigan stood on the floor and said, we have to get this money released. I went with them, and I went with Barack Obama. You did not. If everybody had voted the way he did, I believe the auto industry would have collapsed, taking 4 million jobs with it.
Senator Sanders?
And she keeps saying I'm with all the establishment Democrats.
I believe that the
But he uses it in a
recklessness,
smart way.
the greed, and the illegal behavior of Wall Street drove this country into the worst economic downturn in the history of the modern history of the United States of America. And I will be damned if it was the working people of this country who had to bail out the crooks on Wall Street. And what I proposed, and I had an amendment that was defeated by a voice vote on the floor of the Senate that said to those people on the top who benefited from Wall Street greed, I said, you pay for the bailout. Don't go to my constituents who are struggling to make ends meet. In terms of the auto bailout, of course that made sense. In terms of the stimulus package, of course that made sense. And I strongly supported President Obama's position on that. But let us be clear. One of the major issues, Secretary Clinton said there was one issue, first of all, I guess so. My one issue is trying to rebuild a disappearing middle class. That's my one issue.
Senator Sanders. All I can say is that given the terrible pressures that the auto industry was under, and that the middle class of this state and Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Wisconsin and Missouri and other places in the Midwest were facing,
May or may not.
I think it was the right decision to heed what President-elect Obama asked us to do. He sent a letter, an authorized letter, asking us to support that to save the auto industry. Yeah, were there things in it that you and I would not have necessarily wanted? That's true. But when it came down to it, you were either for saving the auto industry or you were against it. I voted to save the auto industry, and I am very glad that I did.
Let me just say this. While we're on Wall Street, one of us has a super PAC. One of us has raised $15 million from Wall Street for that super PAC. One of us has given speeches on Wall Street for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I kind of think if you get paid a couple of $100,000 for a speech, must be a great speech. I think we should release it and let the American people see what that transcript was.
And I have said, and I will say again, I'll be happy to release anything I have as long as everybody else does too. Because what really is behind that question, Republicans and Democrats, is whether I can stand up to Wall Street. Well, let's have some facts instead of some rhetoric for a change. I went to Wall Street when I was a United States Senator. I told them that they were wrecking the economy. I asked for a moratorium on foreclosures. I asked that we do more to try to prevent what I worried was going to happen. I also called for closing loopholes, including the carried interest loophole. I also called for changes in CEO pay. I have a record. And you know what? If you were going to be in some way distrusted or dismissed about whether you can take on Wall Street if you ever took money, President Obama took more money from Wall Street in the 2008 campaign than anybody
and
ever
I
had.
wouldn't trust Obama.
To stand up to Wall Street, he passed and signed the toughest regulations since the Great Recession.
Senator Sanders, let me just follow up with you. You'll go follow up. Senator Sanders, just yesterday, in fact, you said, I believe it was yesterday, you said not only her speech must have been a fantastic speech, it must have been a Shakespearean speech for that amount of money. Is her answer enough for you that she'll release it when all the Republicans and Democrats
want everybody else to release it? Well, I'm your Democratic opponent. I release it. Here it is. There ain't nothing. I don't give speeches to Wall Street for hundreds of thousands of dollars. You got it. Second of all. You got it. Second of all. Talk about being tough on Wall Street. And this really galls me and the American people. Recently, Goldman Sachs, among many other major financial institutions on Wall Street, as you know, reached a settlement with the federal government for $5 billion because they were selling worthless packages of subprime mortgages. $5 billion settlement. You know how many people, executives on Wall Street, have gone to jail? If you're a kid caught with marijuana in Michigan, you get a police record. If you're an executive on Wall Street that destroys the American economy, pay a $5 billion fine, no police record. If I'm elected president, we're going to bring justice back to a broken criminal justice system.
Secretary Clinton, damn right you are.
This is the last debate before the Michigan vote.
I think we are in vigorous agreement on this. I have said repeatedly, no bank is too big to fail, no executive too powerful to jail, and I have said that I would use the tools in the Dodd-Frank regulations that if any bank posed a systemic risk to the economy, they would be broken up. Because we now have tools, laws, that we didn't have before. And I am very happy we did. Because there does need to be accountability, including criminal accountability, if it is called for.
Senator Sanders, I just want to show the audience, you sent a tweet. I want to return to trade. You sent a tweet on Thursday. This is the tweet. I'm showing it to the viewers. It said, the people of Detroit know the real cost of Hillary Clinton's free trade policies. It shows pictures of crumbling buildings. It seems like you're blaming her for the situation in Detroit.
I am blaming the trade policies. You know, this is an amazing thing, which I didn't know until recently. But I wonder how many people did know this.
But you're calling them Hillary Clinton's free trade policies.
Well, Hillary Clinton and everybody else who supported these disastrous trade policies, she wasn't alone. We had many, many Republicans and far too many Democrats who supported these disastrous trade policies. Do you know
that it's even in the attack?
In 1960, Detroit, Michigan was one of the wealthiest cities in America. Flint, Michigan was a prosperous city. But then what happened is corporate America said, why do I want to pay somebody in Michigan a living wage when I can pay slave wages in Mexico or China? We're going to shut down. We're going to move abroad. We're going to bring those products back into this country. Those trade policies, as much as any other set of policies, has resulted in the shrinking of the American middle class. And I'll tell you what else it did. It's not only job loss by the millions, it is the race to the bottom. So that new jobs in manufacturing, in some cases today, pay 50% less than they did 20 years ago. How stupid is that trade policy?
Well,
wow. Wrong. Jimmy Dore's here, everybody. Jimmy Dore. Jimmy, Bernie won by...
we're going to argue about the 1990s instead of talking about the future, which I much prefer because I think every election is about the future, and you all deserve to know what we will do to help you have a brighter future. But if we are going to talk about the 1990s, I think it's only fair to say that at the end of the 1990s, after 2 terms of my husband's presidency, the unemployment rate in Michigan was 4.4%. There had been a net increase of 54,000 manufacturing jobs. There had been a net increase of 653,000 jobs overall. And one of the ways jobs were brought to and grown here in Michigan was through something called the Export-Import Bank, which helped a lot of businesses, particularly small businesses, be able to export around the world. Senator Sanders opposes that. I think we're in a race for exports. I think China, Germany, everybody else supports their businesses. Here in Michigan, there's been $11 billion in recent years used to support exports, primarily from small businesses. I favor that. He's opposed it. I want to do everything I can for us to compete and win in the global economy.
I just want to explain,
as president.
I just want to explain to viewers what the Export-Import Bank is, in case everybody is not quite as wonkish as all of us on the stage here. The Export-Import Bank, it's a federal agency. It gives loans to companies that export American products. Senator Sanders, you do oppose it. The vast majority of the bank's customers are small businesses, 176 right here in Michigan. What do you say to small business owners?
I'll tell you what I
rely on the bank.
The Export-Import Bank is totally bullshit.
You know what?
It's total crony capitalism.
Export-Import Bank is what it's called in Washington. It's called the Bank of Boeing. Because Boeing itself gets 40% of the money discharged by the Export-Import Bank.
So true.
75% of the funds going from the federal government, the Export-Import Bank, goes to large, profitable corporations. Many of these corporations have shut down in America and have gone abroad to exploit poor people.
Definitely.
You know what? I don't think it's a great idea for the American taxpayer to have to subsidize through corporate welfare profitable corporations who downsize in the United States of America. Senator, 75% of that money goes to large profitable corporations.
Senator Sanders, you were the only member of the Democratic caucus to vote against it. You're agreeing with Senator Ted Cruz on this. Why is he right? In the
That's such bad framing.
Let me tell you, I don't want to break the bad news. Democrats are not always right. Democrats have often supported corporate welfare. That's so true.
I hope it doesn't hurt them.
Supported disastrous trade agreements. But on this issue, I do not believe in corporate welfare. And in fact, Secretary Clinton may know or not know that as a member of the Financial Services Committee, I worked very hard and successfully to make sure that at least 20% of the money went to small businesses, which is where it should go, not to profitable corporations downsizing our country.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, when I traveled around the world on your behalf as Secretary of State, went to 112 countries, one thing I saw everywhere was how European countries, Asian countries were supporting their companies back in their countries to be able to make sales and contracts in a lot of the rest of the world. In fact, without the Export-Import Bank supporting businesses of all sizes, I believe more jobs would be lost here at home. More jobs literally would be exported. Instead of exporting products, we would be exporting jobs. I just believe that Senator Sanders, he took that lonely position because most of us who saw the results, I saw it as a senator from New York. Your senators saw it here in Michigan. They can give you the names of the 240 companies in Michigan that have been helped. There's a company in Livonia that is being helped. There's companies all over this state.
You guys love to help
She
companies.
knew the name of that company before the debate.
That's a good
She's kind of angry she doesn't know the name of that company now in Livonia.
Support their
But
companies,
even to know the
and we
name of the
take a
city.
hands-off approach.
I'm gonna
I will not.
I just want to push back on this. Senator Sanders is correct. The majority of this money from this bank does go to Boeing, goes to companies like Caterpillar. Do they really need this money?
I'll tell you what, Anderson. After I investigated it, I concluded that they did, and here's why. There are two big plane manufacturers in the world. There's Airbus and there's Boeing. Airbus does everything it can to get contracts to sell planes everywhere in the world. We don't have as quite an aggressive outreach from our government. I did go in many places around the world to sell American products because the alternatives were usually European, Asian, primarily Chinese products. That to me was an unacceptable concession. So yes, Boeing and other big companies get support just like their competitors do from the companies that they are from in the countries that provide the support.
Thank you,
Isn't
Senator
it
Sanders.
tragic that these large multinational corporations making billions of dollars a year, shutting down in America, going to China, going to Mexico? Oh, absolutely, they need a handout from the American middle class. I don't think so. Second of all,
It's true. No, you can shake your head, but he's absolutely right.
second of all,
My nephew works for Boeing, so actually I'm going to go with Hillary
He's
Clinton.
been to Europe, and let's talk about Europe versus the United States. I am sure that when you were in Europe, in France, and Germany, and the UK, and all of the other countries, you noticed something. And that is every one of those countries guarantees health care to all of their people as a right.
He's so much more aggressive tonight. Wow, he's
And I'm sure you, yes, I know you do.
Oh, I feel
That
the
in
burn all the way
countries
from
like
here.
the UK, compared to America, we're spending almost 3 times as much as they're spending in the UK for health care for our people. We're spending 50% more than the French. So when we talk about Europe and their pluses and minuses,
Thank you, Senator.
one thing they have done well that we should emulate and that is guaranteed chaos.
There's fireworks.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Secretary Clinton, 30 seconds, and I have to take a break.
Doing that. Thanks to President Obama and the Affordable Care Act, we have 90% coverage. We are lacking 10%. We're going to stay on that path, and we're going to get to 100% universal coverage.
We have to take a break. We'll continue this discussion. We have a lot more to talk about. We're going to take a short break. We're going to do more of the Democratic presidential debate from Flint, Michigan, when we come.
Okay, guys, we got to take a break here. But geez, Lord mercy, we walked into a firestorm here. Okay, Bernie Sanders is on fire. Everybody's feeling the burn. He is 1,000 times more aggressive in this debate than once he's been in before. So we're going to tell you all about it when we continue the play-by-play. We'll be right back. Stay right here.
Our job is not to divide. Our job is to bring people together. If we do not allow them to divide us up by race, by sexual orientation, by gender, by not allowing them to divide us up by whether or not we were born in America or whether we're immigrants, we stand together. White, black, and Hispanic, gay and straight, woman and man. When we stand together and demand that this country work for all of us rather than the few, we will transform America, and that is what this campaign is about. It's bringing people together. Together.
All right, we're back on the debate. We're going to do a lot of analysis for you guys at the end here and throughout, obviously. So let's go to Anderson Cooper's question.
Went on a shooting rampage, killing 6 people, injuring 2 people. One of the injured was a 14-year-old girl. Her name is Abigail Koff. She was shot in the head Her heart stopped. She was on life support. It looked like she might not make it, but amazingly, Abigail pulled through. Her father... Her father, Gene Koff, is here tonight, and I know, Gene, you have a question, but before you ask your question, I just want to ask, how is Abigail doing tonight?
She's now laughing and giggling, but she has a long road of physical recovery.
I should point out you are leaning toward Senator Sanders, but I know you have a question that applies to both candidates. We'll first toss it to Secretary Clinton. What's your question?
The United States has had a rash of mass shootings over the years. 42 shootings in the United States this year alone. The man who shot everyone, including my daughter in Kalamazoo, had no mental health issues reported and had a clear background. What do you plan to do to address this serious epidemic? I don't want to hear anything about tougher laws for mental health or criminal backgrounds because that doesn't work.
Wow, that's a strong question. I like it a lot. Because that puts them on the spot.
Yeah, first of all, I'm looking at your daughter, and I'm very grateful that she's laughing and she's on a road to recovery.
Thank God.
But it never should have happened.
Thank God she's...
On average, 90 people a day are killed by gun violence in our country. I think we have to try everything that works to try to limit the numbers of people and the kinds of people who are given access to firearms. The Brady Bill, which has been in effect now for about 23 years, has kept more than 2 million purchases from going forward. So we do have to continue to try to work on that, because not every killer will have the same profile. But the comprehensive background checks, closing the gun show loophole, closing the online loophole, closing what's called the Charleston loophole, where you get a gun at the end of 3 days, even if the background check is not completed, which is what the killer in Charleston did, and then they found out later he shouldn't have gotten the gun, and he killed 9 people at Mother Emanuel Church. I also believe so strongly that giving immunity to gun makers and sellers was a terrible mistake, because it removed any accountability from the makers and the sellers. And it also disrupted what was a very promising legal theory to try to get makers to do more to make guns safer, for example, to try to give sellers more accountability for selling guns when they shouldn't have. So that is an issue that Senator Sanders and I differ on. I voted against giving them immunity, but I think we should very seriously move to repeal that and go back to making sure gun makers and sellers are like any other business. They can be held accountable. And then I do think we've got to have a public...
Thank you.
Well, we've got to have a public discussion, because we have created a culture in which people grab guns all the time. And there's got to be a way to have more warning signals and more efforts to try to stop that from happening.
I want to go to Senator Sanders.
Like with the man who shot
Senator Sanders.
That's why I was... How about a conversation?
I remember President Obama being on television maybe 3 months ago. I'm sure the secretary remembers as well. She knows the president, I know the president, and he's, generally speaking, in public at least, not a very emotional guy. And he, after the mass killing in Oregon, if my memory is correct, he said, look, to be honest with you, let's be honest, nobody has a magic solution to this problem. Any lunatic tomorrow, any person can walk into a theater and do something horrific, and you know what? For us to tell you that that absolutely will not happen would be untrue. But what the president said, he said, look, this is a tough issue, but we have got to do everything we possibly can to minimize the possibility of these mass killings. You're looking at a guy who comes from a rural state, no gun control. I have a D- voting record from the NRA. You're looking at a guy who in 1988 lost a statewide election for Congress because I was the only candidate who said, you know what, I don't think it's a great idea in this country to be selling military-style assault weapons which are designed to kill people.
Senator Sanders.
I lost that election by 3 votes. I agree with
what the Secretary said. We need to expand and improve the instant background checks.
But he said,
Bottom
don't
line
say
is, people who should not have guns in America should not be able to buy guns in America.
Secretary Clinton mentioned the so-called Charleston loophole, which she's calling the Charleston loophole. Is that something, if you were president, you would work to extend that 3
I agree. Absolutely. That bill had some sensible provisions. It had the banning of bullets that pierce policemen's armor. Is that a good thing? I think we want to get rid of that.
Either one of them really
that particular legislation had
what the guy's saying is
safety locks
no criminal record
on guns, so they don't.
mental health.
No way.
It's impossible.
How do you stop car crashes?
You would
Exactly.
you do 3-day waiting.
You
Get rid of all guns.
much tougher gun control. Much tougher gun control.
What that real debate was about, as you may or may not know, was about how long it would take for the instant background check to go into effect. I wanted that instant background check to go into effect as soon as possible. That was the most important part of that bill.
Secretary Clinton, Senator Sanders, let me continue to follow up. Because Secretary Clinton mentioned the liability, right now, families of Sandy Hook victims announced that they are going to sue Remington, which made the AR-15, which was used in the Newtown massacre. Now, they believe, those families believe that Remington, the distributors, the sellers should be held legally responsible for how that gun, how their product is used. Now, the lawsuit may not go anywhere because of the bill you voted for, legislation that prevents gun makers from being sued. Tonight, what do you say to those families?
Well, this is what I say. If I understand, then correct me if I'm wrong. If you go to a gun store and you legally purchase a gun, and then 3 days later, you go out and you start killing people, is the point of this lawsuit to hold the gun shop owner or the manufacturer of that gun liable? If that is the point, I have to tell you I disagree. I disagree because you hold people, in terms of this liability thing, where you hold manufacturers' liability is if they understand that they're selling guns into an area that is getting into the hands of criminals. Of course they should be held liable. But if they are selling a product to a person who buys it legally, what you're really talking about is ending gun manufacturing in America. I don't agree with that.
Well, that is not what happened. And I think it's important for people to understand. Because of the proliferation of guns, because of the epidemic of gun violence in our country, there were a group of cities, states, and other concerned people who, in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, were working on legal theories that they thought would force gun makers to do more to make guns safer and force sellers to be much more responsible. The NRA saw this happening, and they said, we've got to stop it. Last thing in the world we want is to have guns that you can only shoot with your fingerprint, or to have guns with such strong safety locks on them that they may not be sellable. So,
I bet the media is not true, first of all, because the first biometric gun
the head of the NRA has said this was the most important NRA legislation in more than 20 years. And they basically went to the Congress. I was there. I was in the Senate. And they said, give us absolute immunity. No other industry in America has absolute immunity, and they sell products all the time that call for their health responsibility.
As I understand it, what you're really talking about is not what Secretary Clinton is responding to. As I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but what you are essentially saying, what people are saying, is that if somebody who is crazy or a criminal or a horrible person goes around shooting people, the manufacturer of that gun should be held liable. And if that is your position, then what you are saying, essentially, if that is the case, as I understand it, it's not what Secretary Clinton is talking about. I agree with what she said. But if that is the case, then essentially your position is there should not be any guns in America, period. Now, I understand.
Like the NRA position.
Can I finish, please? All right? And you can, there are people who hold that view.
I'm writing a tweet about my prediction is
what you do
will focus on
is you hold those people who abuse the gun accountable. You try to make guns as safe as possible, but I would disagree on that.
We're going to move on. Don?
Anderson, I just want to finish because I know some of the parents from Sandy Hook. I want people in this audience to think about what it must feel like to send off your first grader, little backpack maybe on his or her back, and then the next thing you hear is that somebody has come to that school using an automatic weapon, an AR-15, and murdered those children. Now, they are trying to prevent that from happening to any other family. And the best way to do that is to go right at the people who you talk about corporate greed. The gun manufacturers sell guns to make as much money as they can make.
Senator Sanders. Well, I think it is a little bit.
I can't write. Hey, Bernie, move away from this fucking book.
What happened in Sandy Hook? What happened in Michigan?
Why is he doing
this? It has happened far too often.
You're on the wrong side of fucking Mass Jimmy.
I'll tell you what.
Terrible, tragedy.
More or less honest.
And we have got to do everything.
It's just bad.
You should have stopped talking about it.
Stop talking about it immediately.
These mass killings. But as I understand, the question is,
but let me just say again, I like gun manufacturing.
I was there.
What the fuck? How does that help you?
When we learned about this killing, it is almost unspeakable to talk about some lunatic walking into a room. I mean, it is hard to even talk about. We all feel that way. But if, as I understand it, Anderson,
stop saying this.
People saying, let's end gun manufacturing in America. That's the implications of that.
We're gonna move on, Don Lim. All right, thank you very much, Anderson. As a black man in America, if I were born today, I'd have a 1 in 3 chance of ending up in prison in my life. Secretary Clinton, on the campaign trail, you were calling for an end to the era of mass incarceration. But a lot of folks in the black community blame the 1994 crime bill, a bill you supported, for locking up a generation of black men. Given what's happened since 1994, why should black people trust you to get it right this time?
Well, Don, let me say this. Senator Sanders voted for that bill. We both supported it. And I think it's fair to say we did, because back then there was an outcry over the rising crime rate. And people from all communities were asking that action be taken. Now, my husband said at the NAACP last summer that it solved some problems, but it created other problems, and I agree. And one of those problems was, unfortunately, a move to expand the reasons why people would be incarcerated, not just at the federal level, which was what this bill was about, but in states and localities as well. And that's why the very first speech that I gave in this campaign was about criminal justice reform and ending the era of mass incarceration. Because I believe absolutely that too many families were broken up, too many communities were adversely affected. So we've got to do a bunch of things. On the criminal justice side, look, we've got to have better policing. That means body cameras. That means ending profiling. That means doing everything we can to make sure there's respect between the community and the police. And when it comes to incarceration, that means we have to limit mandatory minimums. We have to end disparities in treatment.
The question of Secretary Clinton is why should black people trust you this time to get it right? That's the question.
Well, Senator Sanders voted for it as well. Are you going to ask him the same question?
Probably will. Do you think your support? Probably will. Your husband has said that this bill was a mistake. Do you think it was a mistake?
I just said that. He said at the NAACP that there were some aspects of it that worked well. The violence against women provisions have worked well, for example. But other aspects of it were a mistake, and I agree. That's why I'm focused and have a very comprehensive approach toward fixing the criminal justice system, going after systemic racism that stalks the criminal justice system, ending private prisons, ending incarceration of low-level offenders, and I am committed to doing that.
This is maybe the most important answer Bernie Sanders is going to have. Back in 1994, here's what you warned. You said, we are dooming tens of millions of young people to a future of bitterness, misery, hopelessness, drugs, crime, and violence. But you voted for the bill anyway. Was your vote a mistake?
You know, as I think Secretary Clinton knows, as we all know, there are bills in Congress that have bad stuff. There are bills in Congress that have good stuff. good stuff and bad stuff in the same bill. Now, if I had voted against that bill, Secretary Clinton would be here tonight and she'd say, Bernie Sanders voted against the ban on assault weapons. Bernie Sanders voted against the Violence Against Women Act. Those were provisions in the bill, as the Secretary just indicated. So in that bill, there were some good provisions. I have been a fierce fighter against domestic violence ever since I was mayor of Burlington. Violence Against Women Act.
He's
an idiot. I mean,
Jesus.
The ban on assault.
Should have immediately said because it had the violence.
It was in that bill.
And I support women.
I went to the floor, as I recall, and that's what I said. I tried to get the death penalty aspects in that bill out. Secretary Clinton and I have a disagreement. I was then and I am now opposed to the death penalty. So, to answer your question, what you read was a congressman who was torn, who said there are good things in that bill. There are bad things overall. I voted for it. But where we are right now is having 2.2 million people in jail, more than any other country on earth. This is a campaign promise. At the end of my first term, we will not have more people in jail than any other country.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. I want to go now to David McGee, who works for a foundation, and he is a youth development program director there in charge of the youth development program. He says he's undecided, but his question is for Senator Sanders. David?
He didn't mention predators.
No, we live in a very diverse nation.
Lobbies.
Opportunities to lead, however, to be frank, are often at the feet of older Caucasian men and women.
You're not talking about me, are you?
Men more so than women. However, what experiences have you had that have helped you deeply understand the mindset and values of other cultures?
Well, I think the best answer, I don't know that I can give you a definitive answer here, but I'll give you this answer. When I was a young man at the University of Chicago, I worked with fellow black and white students trying to desegregate University of Chicago owned housing. Most candidates for president don't usually put this on their resume, but a year later I was arrested by the Chicago police for trying to desegregate the Chicago school system.
Why you did that? It wasn't for politics because you deeply cared about it. Make it personal.
In 1963, and a very important day for me, I went to the March on Washington led by Dr. King for jobs and freedom. And Dr. King has been an important inspiration for me. In this campaign, if you go to BernieSanders.com and read our position on criminal justice, it is, I believe, the strongest position of any candidate. And what it says, among many other things, when 51% of African American kids today are unemployed or underemployed, you know what we're going to do? We're going to provide education and jobs for those kids, not jails and incarceration.
In a speech about policing, the FBI Director James Comey borrowed a phrase from the Broadway show Avenue Q, saying, "Everyone is a little bit racist." So on a personal front, what racial blind spots do you have?
Well, let me go answer Mr. McGee's question, because I think it's a very profound one. I think the most important thing that happened to me was a combination of my church and my youth minister when I was a teenager insisting that we go into inner city Chicago, because I lived in a suburb, and have exchanges with kids in black and Hispanic churches. It was also important for me to be a babysitter for the children of migrant workers and to learn more about their lives, and to go hear Dr. King
she's giving
speak in Chicago when I was about 14 years old.
Life, which things she really did.
That got me thinking about what I needed to do to try to fulfill my faith. And when I was in law school, I had the opportunity to meet a visionary woman named Marion Wright Edelman, who had worked with Dr. King.
That's what these kids need, is some more free enterprise.
Pass the bar, and I asked her for a job. She said she didn't have any money. I was working my way through law school. She said if I could get a job, get myself paid, she'd give me a job. So I got a Law Student Civil Rights Research Council grant. The first thing she did was send me to South Carolina to investigate juveniles being put into adult jails. The second thing she did was to send me to Alabama to investigate segregated academies. So from that moment until today, I am so grateful for my experiences as a very young woman, driven by my church, and my experiences working for the Children's Defense Fund, which have given me at least some insight and certainly have lit a fire and everything I can to address systemic racism.
Thank you, Secretary Clinton. I want to ask both of you this question over again. I appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. I appreciate you responding to David McGee's question, but I want to ask you this, both of you, again. In a speech about policing, the FBI Director James Comey borrowed a phrase from the Broadway show Avenue Q, saying, "Everyone is a little bit racist." So on a personal front, what racial blind spots do you have? Secretary, you first.
Well, John, if I could, I gotta say, being a white person in the United States, I don't like Uzbeks. Never have. I know that I've never had the experience that so many of the people in this audience have had.
You know, I think
it's incumbent upon me and what I've been trying to talk about during this campaign.
I mean, we were on it. We had it, and then we turned.
To think about what it is like to have to talk with your kids, scared that your sons or daughters even could get in trouble for no good reason whatsoever, like Sandra Bland, and end up dead in a jail in Texas. And I have spent a lot of time with the mothers of African-American children who have lost them. Trayvon Martin's mother.
Say Laquan McDonald.
And I've gotten to know them. I've listened to them. And it has been incredibly humbling because I can't pretend to have the experience that you have had and others have had.
It is a good answer.
But I will do everything that I possibly can
saying,
to
hey,
not
I didn't
only
grow up in that context, so
do the
it's hard
best to
for me to understand it,
and to empathize,
perfectly good.
but to tear down the barriers of systemic racism that are in the criminal justice system, in the employment system, in the education and healthcare system.
But this is an area
what I will try to do to deal with what I know is the racism that still stalks our country.
Senator Sanders, on a personal front, what racial blind spots do you have?
Let me just very briefly tell you a story. When I was in one of my first years in Congress, I went to a meeting downtown in Washington, D.C. And I went there with another congressman, an African-American congressman. And then we kind of separated during the meeting. And then I saw him out later on. And he was sitting there waiting. And I said, well, let's go out and get a cab. How come you didn't go out and get a cab? He said, no, I don't get cabs in Washington, D.C. This was about 20 years ago. Because he was humiliated by the fact that cab drivers would go past him because he was black. I couldn't believe, you just sit there and you say, this man did not take a cab 20 years ago in Washington, D.C. Tell you another story. I was with some young people active in the Black Lives Matter movement. Young lady comes up to me and she says, you don't understand what police do in certain black communities. You don't understand the degree to which we are terrorized. And I'm not just talking about the horrible shootings that we have seen, which have got to end, and we've got to hold police officers accountable. I'm just talking about everyday activities where police officers are bullying people. So, to answer your question, I would say, I think it's similar to what the Secretary said. When you're white, you don't know what it's like to be living in a ghetto. You don't know what it's like to be poor. You don't know what it's like to be hassled when you walk down the street or you get dragged out of a car. And I believe that as a nation in the year 2016, we must be firm in making it clear we will end institutional racism and reform a broken criminal justice system.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Sanders, a CNN poll found that 64% of Americans felt like race relations got worse over the last decade. You said race relations would absolutely be better under Sanders' presidency. So, how would you be more effective in tackling racial issues than President Barack Obama?
It's not a question of being better than President Obama. It is a question of building on the work that President Obama has done, the very important work.
You said absolutely, though, in an answer.
No, well, he has given us a good basis and foundation. We got to do better than that. Of course,
honest answer is President Obama has not.
But here's what I would do. I would make sure that the Department of Justice investigated every killing of a citizen of this country when they are under apprehension from a police officer or when they are killed in police custody. I would end the militarization of local police departments. I would develop model programs to make police departments look like the communities that they serve. I would end minimal sentencing and give judges more discretion. I would recognize that substance abuse and drug addiction is a health issue, not a criminal issue. And I would make sure that those people who left jail had the education and job training so they don't go back into the same environment which got them in jail in the first place.
Senator, thank you very much.
Franklin needs help getting jobs.
In 1996, you used the term super predators to describe some young kids. Some feel like it was racial code. Was it? And were you wrong to use that term?
Well, I was speaking about drug cartels and criminal activity that was very concerning to folks across the country. I think it was a poor choice of words. I never used it before. I haven't used it since. I would not use it again. Because my whole life, to go back to what I was saying to Mr. McGee, is, really, ever since I went to work for the Children's Defense Fund, is to try to figure out ways to even the odds for people that are left out and left behind. And I know very well that we have too many kids in our country right now who are living in poverty, who are going to schools like the ones in Detroit that have mold and rodents in them. I saw that in South Carolina. It's unfortunately across America. So what we've got to do is provide more opportunities earlier in the lives of every child. That's why I believe in supporting families, early childhood education, universal pre-kindergarten, help kids be successful. And here in Flint, we've got to do more to mitigate against the effects of lead, because too many kids are having the experiences I've been told about, where they're falling back in school, where they're having headaches because of the lead exposure. So we're going to have to do even more here than we would do in most other places.
We're going to talk about education in just a moment.
Can I respond to that briefly? Just in this, I am not sure which legislation that was, but I think it may have been the welfare reform, so-called. Oh, that was the crime bill. But during that same period, 96, there was a bill called, so-called, had a long title to it, Welfare Reform Bill. And this bill really was a bill that scapegoated the poorest people in this country. I strongly opposed that legislation. Secretary Clinton had a different position then. And what that legislation ended up doing is increasing extreme poverty. The poorest people in this country have become much poorer as a result of that, really a bill that was written by Republicans. Bad bill.
Secretary Clinton, you were invoked.
Well, once again, if we're going to argue about the 90s, let's try to get the facts straight. That bill had a lot of provisions that unfortunately were stripped out by George W. Bush, by Republican governors, and I disagree with the way it was applied. And I have a very clear set of ideas about what should be done to try to provide more support, including trying to cut poverty in half in the next 10 years. But if we're going to talk about the 90s, let's talk about 23 million new jobs. Incomes went up for everybody. The median African-American income went up 33% at the end of the 90s. And we lifted more people out of poverty than at any other time in recent history. So we were on the right path. More jobs, rising incomes, a long page, George W. Bush and trickle-down economics, and brought us the Great Recession, which, thank goodness, President Obama has been digging us out of ever since.
Secretary Clinton is right. 1990s, we created a whole lot of jobs. Good. And I supported many of your husband's initiatives. But in the 1990s, you know what we also did? We deregulated Wall Street, which allowed Wall Street to end up destroying our economy. We passed NAFTA and other disastrous trade agreements, which had a horrendous impact on African Americans in particular, in Flint, in Detroit, and all across this country. So when we talk about the 90s, you're right, a lot of good things happened, but a lot of bad things happened. I voted against those trade agreements.
Thank you, Senator.
And I voted against Wall Street deregulation.
Thank you, Senator. We have to take a short break. The Democratic
Presidential. Okay, guys, we got to take a short break too. We're going to take a really quick break here. We'll come back and analyze how the debate's going so far. The second half, a little less contentious, and Bernie, I think, blew some opportunities. We'll talk about it. We'll come right back.
Our job is not to divide. Our job is to bring people together. If we do not allow them to divide us up by race, by sexual orientation, by gender, by not allowing them to divide us up by whether or not we were born in America or whether we're immigrants, we stand together. White, black, Hispanic, gay, straight, woman, and man. When we stand together and demand that this country work for all of us rather than the few, we will transform America, and that is what this campaign is about. It's bringing people together. Together.
All right, in the first part of the Democratic debate here, Bernie Sanders was very aggressive, attacked on, hey, you support corporations, you support Wall Street, I'm against those things, and I thought he made a very good case for himself. In the second portion of the debate, he has not done a great job. Hillary Clinton won the gun portion of the debate, one, because she's more progressive on that issue and more correct on that issue, and number two, because she was able to paint him as not being pro-mass shootings, that's too much, but he walked himself into that trap by as Jimmy pointed out during the live coverage, talking about it too much. Move on from that topic. That's not a winning topic for you.
He walked back into it again after he was right twice.
Right. And in the mass incarceration issue, he had a huge opportunity, and I think he blew it. I don't think he took advantage of it nearly well enough. Right. So now let's see how it goes in the third portion of the debate. They're back.
In failure, that school system is $3.5 billion in debt. Officials say they could run out of money by April. I want to bring in Shaniqua Kemp. She's right here. Ms. Kemp, her 14-year-old daughter, Imani, is a student in Detroit. Shaniqua is one of 10 parents suing Detroit Public Schools, not for money, she says, but to improve conditions. She says she's currently leaning towards Senator Sanders. Her question will go to both of you, but we'll start with Senator Sanders. Ms. Kemp?
Thank you. Speaking of opportunities for success, in Detroit, schools open and close with no accountability to or transparency to the communities that they service. Not only that, in our schools, as you stated, we have issues with rats, mold, no working water fountains, not to mention non-certified teachers, lack of accountability around transportation, special education, and so much more. With that said, our students can no longer suffer due to lack of these things or having these dilapidated issues take place. So my question is, who's going to step up? Who's going to ensure that the policies and procedures are put in place that will ensure and bring forth a successful future for our students? Because my daughter cannot wait 8 more years for success to take place at your hands.
We shouldn't do it anywhere.
Senator Sanders, let's start with you.
Well, thank you very much for not being resigned to that horrendous situation, but being prepared to stand up and fight back. That's what we need all over this country.
Thank you.
And let me be very honest with you. Hard thing to say, but it is true. A great nation is judged not by how many millionaires and billionaires it has, but by how it treats the most vulnerable amongst us. And that is the children, and that is the elderly. And do you know what? We should be ashamed of how we treat our kids and our senior citizens. We have a Republican leadership in Congress now fighting for hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the top 0.2%, but somehow we can't come up with the money to fix Detroit's crumbling public school system. Somehow we cannot make sure that Detroit has qualified and good teachers. Somehow we can't make sure that there are summer programs for your children and after-school programs for your children. Somehow we cannot do what other countries around the world do, is provide quality child care and pre-K. We have got to change our national priorities. No more tax breaks for billionaires and large corporations. We are going to invest in our children and have the best public school system in the world.
Senator Sanders, before we go to Secretary Clinton, Senator Sanders, let me just follow up with you. As president, you have to decide where to spend your political capital. There's a lot of things you want to do. Where does fixing Ms. Kemp's daughter's school and other schools, where does that lay in your list of things to do?
Not only do we have a crumbling school system in Detroit,
Jesus.
You asked me about my priorities. My priorities are that no, we're not going to give tax breaks to the wealthy. We're going to ask them to start paying their fair share of taxes so we can raise the money to make sure that every child in this country, in Detroit, in Vermont, gets the quality education that he or she deserves.
Secretary Clinton?
They wasted $1 billion. Yes.
You know how
Here's
great your
what I would
son's
do
school
as
could be.
president.
We
Number
spend
one,
$1 trillion
I
on
would
our schools.
reinstate a program we did have during the 90s
We'll be
where
winning
the federal
so much.
government provided funding to repair and modernize public schools because a lot of communities can't afford to do that on their own. Secondly, I would use every legal means at my disposal to try to force the governor and the state to return the schools to the people of Detroit, to end the emergency management, which I believe if you look at the data, the situation has only gotten worse with these emergency managers that have put the system further in debt. Number three, I want to set up inside the Department of Education, for want of a better term, kind of an education SWAT team, if you will, where we've got qualified people, teachers, principals, maybe folks who are retired, maybe folks who are active, but all of whom are willing to come and help. When Detroit gets back their schools, they should have all the help they can get to be able to get teachers into the classroom, to be able to find spaces while schools are being repaired. And I also would look at how we could, through the federal government, support more teachers, because we're going to have a teacher shortage in some of the hardest to teach districts, including Detroit.
Let me just follow up with the Secretary, then I'll come back to you, Senator Sanders. You've been endorsed, Secretary Clinton, by two of the biggest teachers' unions. There's an awful lot of great teachers in this country. It's an incredibly difficult job, one of the most difficult jobs there is. But union rules often make it impossible to fire bad teachers, and that means disadvantaged kids are sometimes taught by the least qualified. Do you think unions protect bad teachers?
You know what? I am proud to have been endorsed by the AFT and the NEA, and I've had very...
So it's Republican framing by Anderson.
Yes.
But it is a layup because she gets the support
with both unions, with their leadership. And we've had really candid conversations because we are going to have to take a look. What do we need in the 21st century to really involve families, to help kids who have more problems than just academic problems? A lot of what has happened, and honestly, it really pains me. A lot of people have been blaming and scapegoating teachers because they don't want to put the money into the school system and deserve the support that
But he's a good point. He threw that pitch up there, and she's like, Babu.
And just to follow up, you don't believe unions protect bad teachers?
You know what? I have told my friends at the top of both unions, we got to take a look at this because it is one of the most common criticisms. We need to eliminate that criticism. You know, teachers do so much good. They are often working under the most difficult circumstances. So anything that could be changed, I want them to look at it. I will be a partner to make sure that whatever I can do as president, I will do to support the teachers of our country.
Is asking people to think big, not small. And when we think big and we talk about education, we got to ask ourselves a simple question. How is it, starting at college, that hundreds of thousands of bright young people are today unable to go to college because they can't afford it? How is it that maybe your kid, and when I was growing up, we didn't have any money, were not even dreaming about going to college because they knew it was another world? So starting with the top. Now I know some people think it's a radical idea. I don't. I believe that every public college and university in this country should be tuition free. So that your child, regardless of the income of your family, knows that if she studies hard, she is going to be able to go to college. And you know what else we do? We invest in child care. Right now, you got child care workers making McDonald's wages. That is crazy. I want well-trained, well-paid child care workers to give our youngest kids the best opportunities.
I want to go over to my colleague, Don Lemon.
I believe your daughter would be, from the state of anything in the world. I believe she could run these major corporations at the beginning of this game. We got to give her a chance. And we got to give her an opportunity. And here's how we give her an opportunity.
Roads and bridges are in need of repair. It would take trillions of dollars to fix it all. Senator Sanders has proposed a $1 trillion plan, but yours is only a quarter of that.
Is your plan big enough to fix the crumbling infrastructure in this country?
Well, there's no doubt we have an enormous backlog of infrastructure repairs. Here's what I do. Congress finally got around to passing the Highway Transportation Bill, which should never have been partisan. It turned into being one partisan argument. I want to go further. I want to put $250 billion on top of what Congress has done. That gets us to a half a billion. I want to start a national infrastructure bank. I want to capitalize it with $25 billion that I believe will leverage 10 times that. That's another $250 billion. So I'm trying to do this in a way that will gain support and be affordable, but there's no doubt we have to do more on our roads, our bridges, our tunnels, our ports, our airports, and as we talked about in the beginning here, under our ground, our water systems, our sewer systems, we have pipelines that are leaking and that are dangerous. We have so much work to be done, and we can put millions of people to work. I think my plan is a very good way to begin doing that work and to get people out there doing it.
Thank you, Secretary. Senator Sanders, critics of your $1 trillion proposal say it is yet another example of a costly plan that will never get through Congress and can't be paid for. The best infrastructure deal is what the Secretary just mentioned. The deal President Obama could negotiate with Republicans was a $305 billion highway bill. If he couldn't do more, how can you?
Well, let's begin by discussing the problem. As you've indicated, the American Society of Civil Engineers say we need trillions of dollars just to bring up our infrastructure to deal with water systems like Flint, just to bring them up to decent levels. We have suggested a $1 trillion investment. Now, you know how we're going to pay for that? I'll tell you how we're going to pay for that. Right now, this country is losing $100 billion every single year because profitable corporations are stashing their profits in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and in other tax havens. And in some cases, not paying 5 cents in federal income tax. I will eliminate that outrageous loophole, and we will raise $1 trillion. And by the way, not only do we rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, $1 trillion over 5 years creates 13 million decent-paying jobs.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
If she won't vote for that Iraq war, we already have that $1 trillion.
It's been a major talking point for both of you. I wanted to bring in Sarah Belair. She's a student at the University of Michigan at Dearborn, who says she's currently undecided. Ms. Belair has a question on fracking, which for viewers is a process of oil and gas drilling that's led to a significant increase in American energy production and jobs, but also raises serious environmental concerns. Sarah, your question is for Secretary Clinton, but you'll both be able to weigh in. Sarah?
Fracking can lead to environmental pollution, including, but not limited to, the contamination of a water supply. Do you support fracking?
Secretary Clinton.
You know, I don't support it when any locality or any state is against it, number one. I don't support it when the release of methane or contamination of water is present. I don't support it, number three, unless we can require that anybody who fracks has to tell us exactly what chemicals they are using. So by the time we get through all of my conditions, I do not think there will be many places in America where fracking will continue to take place. And I think that's the best approach, because right now there are places where fracking is going on that are not sufficiently regulated. So first we've got to regulate everything that is currently underway, and we have to have a system in place that prevents further fracking unless conditions like the ones that I just mentioned are met.
Senator Sanders,
my answer is a lot shorter.
It's not keeping.
No, I do not support fracking. By the way, Anderson, I'm glad you raised the issue of climate change, because media doesn't talk enough about what the scientists are telling us, and that is if we don't get our act together, the planet that we're going to leave our children may not be healthy and habitable. I have introduced the most comprehensive climate change legislation in the history of the Senate, which, among other things, calls for a tax on carbon, massive investments in energy efficiency, wind, solar, and other sustainable energy. Senator, this is a crisis we have got to deal with now.
Senator Sanders, though, to Secretary Clinton's point, there are a number of Democratic governors in many states who say that fracking can be done safely and that it's helping their economies. Are they wrong?
Yes. One of the differences, look, Secretary Clinton, and I've said this before, and I admit it, she has the support of all the governors, Democratic, all the senators, all the congressmen. I don't. I am not part of that establishment. I plead guilty. I happen to be a member of the Environmental Committee. I have talked to scientists all over the world. And what they are telling me, if we don't get our act together, this planet could be 5 to 10 degrees warmer by the end of the century. Cataclysmic problems for this planet. This is a national crisis. And I talk to scientists and tell me that fracking is doing terrible things to water systems all over this country. We have got to be bold now. We've got to transform our energy system to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. We've got to do it yesterday.
Secretary Clinton, before we come to you. Secretary Clinton's going to be able to respond. But Senator Sanders, you've been very tough lately. Last week, you said this about Secretary Clinton, quote, just as I believe you can't take on Wall Street while taking their money, I don't believe you can take on climate change effectively while taking money from those who would profit off the destruction of the planet. Are you suggesting that she's in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry?
Yeah. No, what I am suggesting is that we have a corrupt campaign finance system. And instead of standing up to that finance system, Secretary Clinton has a super PAC, which is raising huge amounts of, I hate to say the word huge, every time I say huge, it means like a lot of money from Wall Street and from the fossil fuel industry. I am doing it a different. Take money to the fossil fuel industry.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, first, let me say I think I have the most comprehensive plan to combat climate change. It sets some very big goals. 500 million more solar panels deployed by the end of my first term, if I'm so fortunate to be president, and enough clean energy to power every home by the end of my second term. What I am looking at is how we make the transition from where we are today to where we must be. I worked with President Obama during the 4 years I was Secretary of State to begin to put pressure on China and India and other countries to join with us to have a global agreement, which we finally got in Paris. So I am committed to and focused on how we make that transition. I've already said we're taking away the subsidies for oil and gas. But it is important that people understand that a president can't go ordering folks around. Our system doesn't permit that. I'm going to set the goals. I will push everybody as hard as I can to achieve those goals. We will make progress on clean, renewable energy and create millions of jobs through that.
Senator Sanders on the campaign. On the campaign trail, Senator Sanders often refers to a fundraiser in January that was hosted by executives for a firm that's invested significantly in domestic fracking. Do you have any comment on that?
I don't have any comment. I don't know that. I don't believe that there's any reason to be concerned about it. I admire what Senator Sanders has accomplished in his campaign. I have more than 850,000 donors. Most of them give less than $100. I'm very proud of that. And I just want to make one point. You know, we have our differences, and we get into vigorous debate about issues. But compare the substance of this debate with what you saw on the Republican
Look at this debate
last week.
They don't applaud that. This is obviously trying to get out of that answer.
Let me make a couple of responses. Let me pick up on the last point the Secretary made. You know, we are, if elected president, going to invest a lot of money into mental health. And when you watch these Republican debates, you know why we need to invest in mental health. Well, here's the difference. Here is the difference. Not a personal difference. We just do things differently. All right? I honestly, look, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. And what Secretary Clinton is saying, and what every candidate who receives money from the fossil fuel industry or the drug companies or Wall Street say, not going to impact me. The question the American people have to ask is, why are these people putting millions of dollars into candidates if it's not going to make a difference?
Thank you, Senator.
And that is why, by the way, that is why one of my top priorities, if elected president, will be to overturn this outrageous Citizens United Supreme Court.
Thank you very much, Senator.
And
we have to go.
And that is one of the many reasons we must all support President Obama's right to nominate a successor to Justice Scalia and demand that the Senate hold hearings and a vote on that succession, because there are so many issues at stake. On the first day of my campaign, I said, we are going to reverse Citizens United.
Thank you, Secretary.
And if we can't get it done through the court, I will lead a constitutional amendment effort
We have more
to
questions.
reverse it that way.
More questions coming up. Much more of the Democratic presidential.
All right, guys. We're also going to take a quick break here. Again, we'll be right back. We'll have analysis of what just happened there. There was a good exchange on super PACs, on lobbyists. Hillary Clinton is a great debater. We'll talk about that in a little bit, too. We'll be right back.
Our job is not to divide. Our job is to bring people together. If we do not allow them to divide us up by race, by sexual orientation, by gender, by not allowing them to divide us up by whether or not we were born in America or whether we're immigrants, we stand together. White, black, and Hispanic, gay and straight, woman and man. When we stand together and demand that this country work for all of us rather than the few, we will transform America, and that is what this campaign is about. It's bringing people together. I'm 30 seconds. I approve this message. Together.
Young Turks, something is going to be forgotten tonight, partly on purpose, I think, based on the experience we have with the establishment media. Bernie Sanders won the state of Maine by about 30 points.
Yeah.
Okay, now, before the weekend, I checked every site there was. Now, was Bernie Sanders more favored in Maine and Nebraska and Kansas? Slightly. Did anyone say he's definitely going to win those states? No. No one said he was definitely going to win those states. Now, he won Kansas by 35, Nebraska by 15, and Maine by 30. Will people then turn around and go, whoa, we didn't expect that. Those are huge wins that in states we weren't even sure he was going to win. My prediction, no. Almost no one will say that. You'll hardly hear about Maine. They'll get lost in the shuffle. There's a Democratic debate tonight, and they'll talk about the Saturday elections. You'll probably hear more about Marco Rubio winning the Puerto Rican primary than you will about Bernie Sanders' 30-point victory in Maine.
They'll say Bernie Sanders wins 3 out of 4 states this weekend. When is he going to drop out?
Really? Very likely.
They're already writing. I saw that this morning already.
The pressure's there already.
Yeah. Okay, now, third part of the debate here. Bernie Sanders in the first part started super strong and aggressive, right? And he's been flagging. You know why? Because it's not in his nature. No, right? They told him to be aggressive. He's got to be aggressive. He was aggressive in the beginning, and now, he's missing a lot of opportunities to say, she met with the fossil fuel lobbyist. Well, she says she doesn't know why. I know why, right? You know why. You know why. Come on, you're gonna let her get away with that? He needed to be more aggressive there. All right, we're back in the debate.
About your emails, you expect the investigation to be wrapped up soon. The Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump, says he's going to talk about your emails every single day if he's the nominee and out on the campaign trail. Democrats want to know, your supporters want to know, if you're the nominee, how are you going to take him on?
Well, let me start by saying that the last time I checked, as of last night, Donald Trump had received 3.6 million votes, which is a good number. And there's only one candidate in either party who has more votes than him, and that's me. I am building a broad, diverse coalition across our country. I am very excited by the support we're receiving. And I have said, and I will repeat here, I think that Donald Trump's bigotry, his bullying, his bluster, are not going to wear well on the American people. And so I will look forward to engaging him because, I don't think we need to make America great again. America didn't stop being great. We have to make it whole again. We have to knock down the barriers. We have to end the divisiveness. We have to unify the country. And if I'm fortunate enough to be the nominee, that's exactly what I want to do.
Senator Sanders, I want to ask you basically the same question. He's called you a communist. How are you going to...
That was one of the nice things that he said about me. I'll tell you something. This is my right arm. I'm prepared to give... No, I shouldn't say that. I would love to run against Donald Trump. And I'll tell you why. For a start, what almost, not all, but almost every poll has shown is that Sanders versus Trump does a lot better than Clinton versus Trump. There was a poll done, I think, yesterday or today, had me beating Trump in Michigan by 22 points. Wow. Secretary Clinton beat him as well, but not by so much. And that's true nationally and in many other states. And the other reason I think we can beat Trump is that our campaign is generating an enormous amount of excitement. Just in the last 2 days, we have won the caucuses in Maine. We won that tonight with a very large turnout. We won Nebraska. We won Kansas. In Kansas, it was the biggest turnout in their caucus history. I think we are exciting working class people, young people who are prepared to stand up and demand that we have a government that represents all of us and not just the few.
Thank you. I want to, we have a question from Denise Gaddis. She grew up here in Flint, Michigan. She said she's undecided on a candidate. She's got a question actually, she's got 2 questions. First one is for Senator Sanders, then she'll ask another question to Secretary Clinton. Denise?
Thank you. Senator Sanders, do you believe that God is relevant? Why or why not?
Well, I think, the answer is yes. And I think when we talk about God, whether it is Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Buddhism, what we are talking about is what all religions hold dear, and that is to do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. I am here tonight, and I'm running for president. I'm a United States Senator from my great state of Vermont, because I believe that. Because I believe morally and ethically, we do not have a right to turn our backs on children in Flint, Michigan who are being poisoned, or veterans who are sleeping out on the street. And what I believe as the father of 7 beautiful grandchildren, I want you to worry about my grandchildren, and I promise you, I will worry about your family. We are in this together.
Senator Sanders. Nice. Yeah, for an atheist.
Let me just follow up. Just this weekend, there was an article I read in the Detroit News saying that you keep your Judaism in the background, and that's disappointing some Jewish leaders. Is that intentional?
No. I am very proud to be Jewish, and being Jewish is so much of what I am. Look, my father's family was wiped out by Hitler in the Holocaust. I know about what crazy and radical and extremist politics mean. I learned that lesson as a tiny child when my mother would take me shopping, and we would see people working in stores who had numbers on their arms because they were in Hitler's concentration camp. I am very proud of being Jewish, and that is an essential part of who I am as a human being.
Denise has a question for Secretary Clinton. Denise?
Yes. Secretary Clinton, during our church services, we pray for the President of the United States, we pray for the armed forces, we pray for all civil authorities 3 times during our liturgy. And we give thanks to them.
That sounds like a great
We pray for our loved ones.
That's right.
We pray for our enemies. To whom and for whom do you pray?
Well, I have been several times in your services and have joined in those prayers.
That's true.
And have also been privileged to lead them in some settings. I pray very specifically for people whom I know by name, people who either have gone through or are experiencing difficult times, illness, divorce, death, disappointment, all of the life experiences that confront most of us. I pray for the will of God to be known so that we can know it, and to the best of our limited ability, try to follow it and fulfill it. I have said many times that, I am a praying person, and if I hadn't been, during the time I was in the White House, I would have become one. Because it's very hard to imagine living under that kind of pressure without being able to fall back on prayer and on my faith. So I do pray for people in authority. I try to think about what they're going through, even when I disagree with them, trying to find some common ground, some common understanding that perhaps can make me more empathetic. I don't always succeed, I will tell you that. So I pray on a pretty regular basis during the day, because I need that strength and I need that support, and especially when you are in the position that I'm in and that Senator Sanders is in, where you are asking people to vote for you, to give you the most important job, not only in our country, but I would argue in the world. I think humility is one of the most important attributes that you bring to both that seeking and then if you're fortunate enough to that holding of office. And that's what I will try to do.
Thank you, Secretary. It's time for closing statements. You will each have 1 minute for closing statements. Sanders, we begin with you.
I wear this. I wore money to wear one. I know you
made any money working in a 3.5-room rent-controlled apartment. So I learned about economics not just in college, but in living in a family that didn't have money to scrape by. We are here tonight in Flint, Michigan, because a horrendous tragedy is taking place. But it's not just in Flint, Michigan. We have 29 million people who have no health insurance. We're the only major country on earth that doesn't provide paid family and medical leave. We have school systems around America that are collapsing. And yet we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But most people don't know that because almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. I believe, in all due respect to my good friend, Secretary Clinton, that it is too late for establishment politics and establishment economics. It is too late for a corrupt campaign finance system and super PACs that raise enormous amounts of money from special interests. We need in this country a political revolution where ordinary people stand up and reclaim the government that men and women fought and died for. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Secretary Clinton.
Well, I'm running for president to do my very best to knock down every barrier that stands in the way of America really realizing its potential and every American having a chance to live up to his or her God-given potential. We have a lot of work to do. We have economic barriers. That's why I've laid out plans for more good jobs with rising incomes. We have barriers that stand in the way of quality health care. That's why I will build on the Affordable Care Act. We have barriers to education. That's why I want to start early and provide debt-free tuition and deal with student debt so that it is no longer the burden that weighs down so many young Americans. And I do want to take on the barriers of systemic racism. I may not have experienced them, but I see the results every single day. So I'm asking for your support in the primary here in Michigan on Tuesday. I'm asking for it, and I will do whatever I can as the Democratic nominee to run a campaign you'll be proud of. I don't intend to get into the gutter with whoever they nominate, but instead to lift our sights, to set big goals, to make it clear that America's best days can be and are ahead of us.
I want to thank both the candidates while we've been debating tonight. The labor union fund has committed $5 million.
But not in the gutter. But not in the gutter.
I want to thank the candidates.
Okay. So we got a lot ground to cover here. So we're going to analyze the debate, obviously, and then I do want to go back to one thing that we had promised you earlier in this coverage, which is Wes trying to do a defense of Hillary Clinton. Okay? Ooh, that'll be interesting. Okay? So
I wasn't thinking about that.
That's all right. You got time to think about it. If you want,
I'm ready.
I'll give you paper and if you want. Oh, look at that.
I will tend to be Hillary Clinton.
Okay. So first, let's go over the debate, and then we'll come back and talk about Maine as well. Bernie Sanders with a huge win in Maine tonight, which will be forgotten by the mainstream media. It's already forgotten.
What did he mention?
Won't be mentioned. That's our guess. We'll find out. Okay. So, all right. Summary of the debate. Well, Bernie Sanders came out super strong in the beginning. He realizes that he's got a lot of ground to make up in the polling in the states coming up on March 8th through March 15th. This debate was held in Flint, Michigan, and he's got ground to make up in Michigan as well, and they're voting on Tuesday, so he's got to get going. So he attacked her on the super PACs on Wall Street and her taking the donations from those guys in the beginning. Very, very aggressive. I thought that was the best part of the debate for him. I'm sure that the establishment media will think otherwise,
I think that rather than talking about the enormously substantive debate tonight, I mean, compared to the Republicans, it is unbelievable. They got into the minutiae of almost every policy there was, as opposed to the Republicans who go, "Hey, little Marco, lying Ted, oh, you should see my dog," right? So, I mean, it's night and day the difference between a Democratic debate and a Republican debate. But it was spirited. I mean, they got at each other in the beginning. But my guess is the establishment media that loves that antics will mainly talking about Bernie Sanders' finger pointing towards Hillary Clinton, which he normally does, but he's on the other side, so it seems like he's pointing away from her. But now, when he was on this side, it looked like that, right? Now, I don't know. We don't know. The debate just ended. We'll find out. They'll talk about the interruptions. They'll talk about his body language, right? And they'll focus on that. That's based on our experience. That's what we think that they'll do. Now, when you get into the actual substance of it, he's right about the super PACs, but then when you get into the second part of the debate, she really won that portion on gun control. He spent too much time on it. Jimmy's absolutely right. During our live coverage, he mentioned that. And then it allowed her to come back and paint him as being soft on mass shootings. Mm-hmm. So she did a great job with that. Wes was right during our live coverage that she is so well prepared for these debates. And you got to give her credit for that. She comes in, she knows exactly what she's going to get, except two notable exceptions here. I thought she was caught off guard on the question about the lobbyist that's giving her money from the fossil fuel industry. She had a terrible answer to that. And then the super predator line, I thought she was caught a little off guard there as well. Didn't give a very good answer. But otherwise, she comes in and she knows what's going to get applause, and she'll pivot. Even in one of those answers, she pivoted it to something that the crowd was so in favor of. And I'll tell you what, we're going to get a Supreme Court justice under President Obama. Everyone's like, ah! So she knows she's very skillful in that way. But when we were talking about mass incarceration, super predators, etc., that could have been a very tough part of the debate for her. I think she handled it overall, that whole section, pretty well, with the notable exception of that line on super predators. And Bernie Sanders blew an opportunity there. He had a chance to pounce and go, hey, look at her real record. Look at what Michelle Alexander writes in The Nation about her real record. Look, yes, Bernie Sanders was also voted for that crime bill, but he still had 1,000 different ways to attack on that issue, and I don't think he did a great job. I think that he lost some of his energy and his aggressiveness as the debate wore on, because I think, and let's be honest here, he's also a politician, right? He's probably the most honest politician of our lifetimes. He's had the same positions for 40 years, but he is in politics, so he's got consultants, and I'm sure that they told him, you got to go get her. But it's not really in his nature. So that as the debate wore on, he went back to being Bernie Sanders. Oh, Secretary Clinton is right, or I agree with Secretary Clinton on that. But I don't know. Say, hey, what do you mean? You don't know why you met with the lobbyist? We know why you met with the lobbyist. Okay, I want to dispel the notion that you didn't know what you were doing when you took that super PAC money and the donor money and the lobbyist money. You knew exactly what you were doing, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah, he said that early on, but he blew a couple opportunities later to pounce on that. So overall, pretty good job by Bernie Sanders in the beginning, but I'm not sure he did enough in this debate. And I think that the media focuses on moments, either zinger lines or finger pointing or disruptions, and that'll probably be the story that comes out of this. So I'm not sure that is the story he wanted out of this debate. What did you guys think?
That pretty much wraps it. No. Look, she's a master debater. She's really good, dude. Mm-hmm. No, it's okay. Look, I believe in evolution. All right, if you have someone who's been beaten up in the press nonstop, had millions and millions of dollars in criminal investigations launched against her since the early 1990s, she's got every response ready. And she was prepped for every single topic, and she didn't notice as much as Bernie was hitting her in the first half. She didn't yell. Mm-hmm. Like, I know Trump's strategy.
Right in the beginning, she did a little bit. But
and once it reaches that tone, you're like, because it's like, your bed isn't made. Right. Get in here and make the bed. And I know it's sexist, but that's how a lot of men think about it, because it's that tone of voice where it's like, you didn't do what you were supposed to do.
And they shouldn't think that way, and we defend her on that. But
we can't help it. It's like It's like subconscious.
And Rubio sometimes yells in debates, and that hasn't worked out for him either. But she just did that in the beginning, and then she brought it back down, and I thought it was very smooth throughout.
And she took every opportunity handed to her and ran with it. There was no pausing. Anything that made her feel uncomfortable, like they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from banks or polluters, she's like, here's another subject that's kind of related we can talk about. She was great at it.
You know, what Donald Trump says, he'll often say, you know, even though he doesn't get along with anybody and he's famously thin-skinned, he always loves to say, I get along with everybody because I have a responsibility to my family, to my company, and to my shareholders, and to my employees. I have a responsibility to do what's in the best interest of my company for all these other people who rely on me. And that's what I would like to say to Bernie Sanders. You have a responsibility to prepare better for these debates. You have a responsibility because I know what he's thinking is, I don't want to be phony. I don't want to be overproduced. I don't want to have spinmeisters in my ear telling me what to say so I sound like a regular politician. The thing that I have going for me is I'm authentic. Yes, you can, but you can also need to learn how to be authentic. See, here's the thing. So the difference between me as a stand-up comedian and a regular person is that who's also funny. Now, I know a guy who's just as funny as you. The difference between me and that guy is that when the improv called and said, Jimmy, can you come be really funny from 9:15 to 9:45 tonight? Yes, I can do that. And that's my responsibility to my career and to those people in the audience and to the club. When they asked Bernie Sanders, can you come and be authentic and get your points across immediately from 5 to 7 o'clock tonight in Michigan, he should say yes, because I'm ready, I practice, I know how to say the points I want to say authentically, and he doesn't. And here's 3 big points that he missed, right? So, why doesn't he bring up Laquan McDonald? Why doesn't he bring up that person? Why doesn't he show the Black Lives Matter people that he's more in touch with these things than she is? He didn't do that. When they were talking also about the crime bill and how what Hillary's done to hurt black people as far as incarceration, her super PAC takes money from the private prison industry, even though she's come out and says that we shouldn't have private prisons. And then she does the exact opposite thing, and that feeds right into his central message. He didn't even bring it up, which makes me think he's not prepared correctly, because you know this is going to come up, and you know that that's your hammer on her. When they bring up the gun issue, which he should have shut the fuck up about so much quicker, answer it quickly and move on. Hillary knows how to do that. He does not. He kept bringing that up. What he should have said was, well, I'll tell you this about guns. I got a D-, and we all know it. But Hillary Clinton, later on this month, is going to a fundraiser held by a former NRA lobbyist, okay? As recent as the last quarter of 2015, Jeff Foster, who's co-hosting this fundraising with Hillary Clinton, was an NRA lobbyist, okay? So we know, so that's how so this is what my point is, he's not prepared. He's going, I'm going to be authentic. My message resonates everywhere I go, and it'll resonate when I'm authentic because I've got the issues on my side. Yes, you do, but you also have a responsibility to be super prepared. And the people surrounding you right now are not preparing you, or they're letting you push them away from preparing you. Either way, you have a responsibility to be more prepared than he is, because he's got the winning position on almost every one of these issues, and you wouldn't know it by this debate tonight.
Wow. So for those of you who are not familiar with what happened with Laquan McDonald, I know a lot of you are, but or the politics behind it that Jimmy's alluding to, which not a lot of people are aware of. It's very important. So Laquan McDonald is a young African-American teenager who gets shot in Chicago as he's walking away from the cops. That cop is actually charged with homicide, so that's good news. But Rahm Emanuel and the Chicago PD kept that tape hidden for a year so that Rahm Emanuel could run his re-election efforts, and then they released it after he won that election. And so Hillary Clinton has backed him on that issue. So what Jimmy's saying is, if you then said, hey, how come you never talk about Laquan McDonald and the fact that you're supporting Rahm Emanuel, the guy who hid the tape for a year of this poor kid who was shot? I mean, that's
so he could win an election.
Yeah, and that's unconscionable. And I hope you're not doing that because you owe some sort of political favor to Rahm Emanuel, or just that you guys are friends, because that kid's life matters, even if you're friends with Rahm Emanuel. Boy, how powerful would that be? And you know what would happen? That would create a media stir, because that would be a fight. That would be dramatic, right? And that could get a headline. And that's okay to do that as long as you're right. As long as your position is correct and you're not throwing any mud on her in a way that's unfair. It's a perfectly fair question to ask. How come you never mention that kid, right? And more importantly, Okay, you can say, oh, I mentioned many kids, right? But you are supporting Rahm Emanuel, and Rahm Emanuel has done several things. One is covered up that that tape for a year, which a lot of Black Lives Matter protesters are furious about, right? And then secondly, he shut down all these schools in Chicago, just like they're shutting down the schools in Detroit. How come you continue to back Rahm Emanuel? That's exactly what Jimmy's talking about. If you have that kind of preparation, you could put her in a spot she doesn't expect. I'd be surprised if she prepared for that question, because it never comes up, right? So it might catch her off guard. And if she does what she normally does, which is a smart debating strategy, which is, but Rahm Emanuel is an old friend of ours, not old friend, but is an important progressive, was chief of staff for President Obama. And I'll tell you what, I'm in favor of President Obama. The normal, she hides behind President Obama whenever she gets into trouble in any of these debates. I'm a progressive. President Obama, are you saying President Obama is a progressive? Because he did it too, right? That's her favorite tactic. Does it over and over again. Then you say and go, okay, no, I didn't ask about President Obama. I'm asking you about two terrible things that Rahm Emanuel is doing that African Americans are justifiably furious over. Now, are you going to denounce those positions and Rahm Emanuel for doing those? Or are you going to continue to back your political ally? That's it. Answer the question. Right? Now, that puts her in a tough spot. But in order to put her in that tough spot, you both have to prepare and be aggressive. And Bernie Sanders is, he's been aggressive in fighting for progressive positions for a long, long time. But in a campaign, I don't know if he's ever had to be this aggressive against an opponent. So, and if you're trailing, which he is in some of these polls that are coming up in very important states, that's what you got to do. And today, he began that, but this is past time of beginning that conversation. This is when you should start to end that conversation. Okay, so now that's a lot of background for what happened in this debate. Let's talk about then who do we think won, right? So, as I said in the summary of this debate, I think Bernie Sanders won the first part of the debate, but a lot of lost opportunities, as Jimmy talked about, I talked about, in the latter parts of it. So I'm curious which way you guys come out on who won, because this one's not clear. I think Hillary Clinton did it
very clear to me. Very clear.
Okay.
She won.
I'll tell you the only reason why it's not as clear to me as it is for you guys, and I'll get to you in a sec, is that one thing he went at over and over is super PACs, millionaires. I know he does it all the time. But remember, a lot of people have never seen Bernie Sanders. They're not like us. And here I thought he stuck to that even better than he normally does. And so one of the things they might take away from this is, yeah, Hillary Clinton's backed by the super PACs. Why is that? And it seems like Bernie's on our side. So now you can say that in almost any debate, but I thought he pounced on it better in this debate than he has in past debates. That's why if we're looking at it for someone who's not seen this before and is trying to make up their mind, it might be a tougher question than you guys think. But go ahead, Wes. Why do you think?
When he uses that argument again, or what he's failing for, is the same kind of thing that he succeeds in, and that his people don't prep him for, which is give me names. Give me specific names of people in Goldman Sachs and Wall Street. If Bernie Sanders can go, well, what about the 15 lunches you've had with Jamie Dimon in the last years? And Andy also went to your daughter's wedding, right? And I don't know if he went to her wedding or not, but you can guarantee there were a lot of bankers at that wedding. Yeah. And there's a lot of bankers surrounding that group of friends where they vacation, everything.
You went to Donald Trump's wedding. So he needs to take every question and he needs to turn it around to his main strength, which is, again,
I'm not corrupt.
The system is corrupt. Yeah. I'm not. She's part of it. She said, if you really want to change things, we'll change things. Now is the time. We're the richest country in the world, but he doesn't take that extra step, and it drives me. Let me just say one more thing where he missed a big. They asked him. Anderson Cooper asked that completely slanted right-wing talking point question about government let people down in Flint, Michigan. Government didn't let people down in Flint, Michigan. What let people down in Flint, Michigan was our corrupt system of crony capitalism, of also bought politicians. And when you elect people, meaning Republicans, who say the problem in America is government, and then you elect them, then they break government. Because let's remember, their water system was working perfectly for a long, long time until we elected a guy who said he was going to break government, and he did. So when you elect Republicans who don't believe in government, That's what you get. When you elect someone like me who knows that the government is the people and the people can work together for the interest of the people and not a corporation or somebody who just gave me a big campaign finance so I switched the water to another private company. That's how he should have answered that. And of course, he was on the defensive. You go on the offensive about how we can make government better and take it away from the people who want to break government. And this is the result. You want to vote Republican? This is the result. They break it. And that was a big part that I think he missed. It's so upsetting. It makes me feel like Bernie might not win because it's been this long and he still is delivering his message in such clumsy ways. You've got to be like a laser beam, right? Especially since you're introducing such new ideas that people have to wrap their head around. You have to make it easy for them. When you say we're the richest country the face of the earth has ever seen, you need to take that extra step by saying, do you know how much money we spent on a war? We spent $1 trillion on the Iraq War. You know how much it costs to send everybody to college for it? $60 billion. It's nothing. So that he doesn't take that extra step. He just says, "Hey, now we're going to make them pay for it," which sounds kind of like Tony Soprano-ish in a sense. It almost sounds Trump-like. We're going to make Wall Street pay for it. We'll make them pay for it. We'll make them fix the schools. We'll make them go to college. We'll make them fix the water. You've got to break it down in specific because the specifics are on your side.
So let me follow up with three things that Jimmy just mentioned, and give you specific answers that he could have given, which he didn't tonight, right? So on Snyder and Flint, Michigan, one thing he could have said is, look, I keep telling you that I'm running to give you real change in this country, right? Because here's what this broken system has given us. He gives us a Republican governor who is a venture capitalist, and he thinks that, all you do is, you save money here, you save money there, and then you take all the money you saved and give it to the corporation. Because that's what he did. He gave over $1 billion to his friends who gave him the money to get elected. And you know what? When it came to just $2 million to give you a better water system in Flint, Michigan, he didn't do it, and your kids wound up getting poisoned. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break the back of that system. Okay? So I'm not going to let him get away with giving $1 billion to their buddies while your kids get poisoned. I'm not going to let him get away with that.
Right.
And the way you end that is you take the money out of politics. So these guys can't fund their election with millionaires and billionaires who are then going to get that money returned to them. I'm going to end it. Okay, that's point one. Point two is, look, there was a point when they were talking about $1 trillion. How are you going to pay for your programs? It costs $1 trillion. Such an easy answer. So you say, one of the ways is, hey, you know what? We could have had $1 trillion for that infrastructure. We could have had $1 trillion for your kids' school. You're asking about your school. I want your kids to have that opportunity. They're wonderful kids who should have every opportunity that everybody else in this country gets. And we could have had that if we didn't waste $1 trillion on a war like Iraq. That's why I voted against it. And that's why you should hold people accountable that voted for it. Because how come Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper, you didn't ask those people at the time, hey, how are you going to afford this $1 trillion war? How come you didn't ask him? But when this poor woman comes up here and says, hey, help my kids, they need to go to a decent school, you say, hey, how are you going to afford that? How come you put that on her, but you didn't put it on the people, the defense contractors and the industry who wanted to go to war, and the people who voted for it, right? So this is what Jimmy's talking about. You got to prepare better so that you're ready to go. And then if you want to just talk about like little politics here, you bring up the Trump wedding, right? They had a question about Trump in there. They both got zingers in attacking Trump. That's easy, but that's a draw, right? One way that you turn it into not a draw is, look, I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton shouldn't have been friendly enough with Donald Trump to go to his wedding. Her friends are her issue, not my issue. All I know is I didn't get an invite. You know why I didn't get an invite to Donald Trump's wedding? Because I've never done him a single political favor. He's got nothing to gain by inviting me to his wedding. I've never been his friend, and I'm never gonna be his friend. Okay, now you see, that's an answer that wins you a debate. Now, Bernie had some of those in the beginning, not enough at the end. She's a very skilled debater. And in the end, I'm going to agree with you guys, 3-0, Hillary Clinton won the debate, right? Now, it's a shame because he came out so strong, you thought he had a good chance of winning it. The only reason we might be wrong is because we're, as I say all the time, we got to have the perspective of the viewer, not just ours. From our perspective, we know all these facts. We know all these lies. We talk about it every day on the Young Turks. So we see the missed opportunities. So as far as the debating tactics, etc., she won, right? As far as what does the average viewer take home,
I don't know, maybe they take that super PAC thing home because he said it so many times. And maybe it introduced a little bit of doubt in their heads. But she says, hey, President Obama over and over again, and maybe they think she's with President Obama. I like President Obama. I'm going to go with her.
She looked calm. She looked confident. She looked winning. And for the last half of the debate, she had the audience on her side. Mm-hmm. They clapped loudest. No doubt. Her lines. I mean, look, the fact that there's the one person that CNN keeps bringing up in every one of these debates to ask about God tells me that that's a setup from the Clinton campaign who knows Sanders is not a let me wear religion on my sleeve person, while Clinton is. So those are all set up. But she clearly had the audience on her side, and she was like, enough, let's get on with this. Well, and she didn't, okay, remember early in the campaign it was, she would go after Bernie, how are you going to pay for this? Notice she didn't go after a single thing he said tonight. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Because she's assuming she's the nominee.
So, I didn't perceive the audience as clearly as you guys did on her side. I thought I was...
Well, in the first half, I thought it was even.
I thought it was
the second half, she had him.
It's like he ran out of steam in the second half too, and there was a lot of things that were different in the second half. And she knew how to spin what the questions were into an applause line, and he obviously didn't. Again, it's a responsibility to figure out how to get your message across in the environment. You know what I mean? You know what? Like when I do comedy, I know there's going to be hecklers. I know there's going to be waitresses. I know that somebody's going to drop a clap. I have to be able to create the environment which gives my jokes the best a chance to succeed. And that's what he needs to do. He needs to give himself the best chance to succeed, and that is to take some tips on how to communicate your ideas better, because you didn't communicate them tonight, and when the door was swung wide open for you to walk through it, you tiptoed a couple of times, and you missed your opportunity. And it's your responsibility to your movement to be able to slam that door closed, because it's open right now, and people are waiting. You got a two-person debate. People are waiting. Oh, it's your responsibility, and it just hurts.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't know if this debate's going to swing anyone's opinion, though. That's the thing. We can say someone won or lost, but ultimately this is a vote in this election is, do you like things the way things are going now? Do you like the way it's going under Obama? Because if my name's Hillary Clinton, you're going to get more of the same from me. So if you like life now, vote for me. And for Sanders, I mean, that's why he still, to me, has an advantage. He still has a possibility. Well, because how many people are that happy with what's going on?
100%. That's what I'm saying. That's why this is his moment, and it's up to him to not let it slip through his fingers, which it seems like tonight he's letting it slip through his fingers. And you say, well, I don't know who's going to make up their mind on this debate. I agree. Maybe this debate, but maybe in Michigan, this debate will be a big deal, and everyone's saying what a big deal Michigan's going to be, because apparently it's not a weird thing. He blew the 90s stuff. He blew the gun issue, and they both blew the teacher issue, right? So, I mean, they did better on it than I expected them to. But here's what you say about the teachers thing: this bullshit, fucking right-wing talking point that Cooper can't stop bringing up. This whole thing about, but the unions, they protect bad teachers, don't they? Don't they protect bad teachers? Let me tell you something. The problem with teaching in America is that qualified people drop out because it's too hard of a goddamn job. The problem isn't getting rid of bad teachers. There isn't a room full of great fucking teachers waiting to come take those jobs in the inner city. There's no great pool of teachers. What happens is they send the youngest teachers down there, and then they drop out because they get discouraged. We got a screwed up system that relies anyway. They need to do a much better job on that. And he should have exactly what you said he should have did, was saying, oh, again, we're going to blame the teachers who are stuffing their pockets full of cash. That's what's wrong with our economy. That's what's wrong is there's teachers who grow up, Anderson Cooper, and why don't you ask this question of Lloyd Blankfein? And why don't you ask this question of the people who run our corporation? He doesn't do that. So, okay, I get a little upset.
Yeah, and one last note on who lost the debate. I'm going to say Anderson Cooper again, and I'll tell you why. In the context of this debate, yes, there were some questions that were framed from a right-wing perspective. I actually want to give credit to Don Lemon for asking.
Don Lemon,
right? Asking about mass incarceration, asking about the super predator line. So good job for Don Lemon tonight. But Anderson Cooper, we just saw him drinking pina coladas with the Republicans at a town hall. I mean, he was super light on them. And I've broken this down in 100 different ways. When CNN does a town hall with Democrats, they don't go light. They don't. Chris Cuomo went after Bernie Sanders over and over. Aren't you going to punish people? Aren't you going to punish people? It's not a matter of town halls. When it's Anderson Cooper, he's super tough on the Democrats. He was tonight. He was in the first debate. Against the Republicans, what musicals do you like? How much do you love your wife? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's such bias. It's conservative establishment bias, and it's sickening. Okay. Now, look. The last note of caution I'll say on our thought that Hillary Clinton won overall is that it's possible that we're making the same mistake pundits are, in that when we see a studied politician, we're grading her on being a studied politician. Exactly. On performing well. Whereas a regular citizen might look at that and go, yeah, I don't want the person performing well. That guy looks more honest. I mean, look at what happened to Marco Rubio throughout this entire process. He is a very studied politician. Every pundit says he wins all the debates, and then he gets his ass handed to him in the elections. So that note of caution that we're so mired in covering politics, we might not have seen it straight either. But fair is fair. We all thought that Clinton won this debate. Okay, so now let's go to some of the lines. Before we do that, though, I'm going to throw Jimmy a bone here. I like how worked up you are. This is actually a tweet from yesterday, but it's still in my system. Ash McGonigal says, first time watching #TYT Live. Don't know who the dude with the glasses is, but he's my favorite. That right there is Jimmy Dore, okay?
Thank you very much. Nice of you to read that.
Okay, so now, let me go to video number 2 here. So, at one point, things got pretty contentious. Let's show you that and then talk about the controversy.
Well, I'll tell you something else that Senator Sanders was against. He was against the auto bailout. In January of 2009, President-elect Obama asked everybody in the Congress to vote for the bailout. The money was there and had to be released in order to save the American auto industry and 4 million jobs, and to begin the restructuring. We just had the best year that the auto industry has had in a long time. I voted to save the auto industry. He voted against the money that ended up saving the auto industry. I think that is a pretty big difference.
Well, if you were talking about the Wall Street bailout, where some of your friends destroyed this economy, excuse me, I'm talking, let him run.
If you're going to talk, tell the whole story.
Let me tell my story, you tell yours.
I will.
Your story is for voting for every disastrous trade agreement and voting for corporate America.
I voted against the only multinational trade agreement that came before me when I was in the Senate. It was called CAFTA. I came out against the TPP. After it was finished, I thought it was reasonable to actually know what was in it before I opposed it. I oppose it. Now let me get back to what happened in January of 2009. The Bush administration negotiated the deal. Were there things in it that I didn't like? Would I have done it differently? Absolutely. But was the auto bailout money in it? The $350 billion that was needed to begin the restructuring of the auto industry? Yes, it was. So when I talk about Senator Sanders being a one-issue candidate, I mean very clearly, you have to make hard choices when you're in positions of responsibility.
But let us be clear. One of the major issues, Secretary Clinton says I'm a one-issue person. Well, I guess so. My one issue is trying to rebuild a disappearing middle class. That's my one issue.
So that was a nice piece of controversy there as they went at each other, and then he said, don't interrupt me, basically. Let me finish my answer. I imagine that a lot of people will be talking about that at the end of the debate. I'd be surprised if the Bernie Bro Brigade, those people that charge people with being Bernie Bros, don't come out and accuse him of being sexist because he said don't interrupt me. He was interrupting him. All right. Well, let's see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, but my guess is that they'll go in that direction. How dare you? Now, when the Republicans shout over each other nonstop, there's no such issue. But the minute somebody says, hey, can I finish my answer? We'll see if it's an issue, right? But more important is the actual substance of it, the bailout. She paints the bailouts as, well, I was saving American industry, like the car companies. He paints it as, are you kidding me? These guys
are billionaires, and they ask the American taxpayer, the middle class, to pay for their screw-up. Yeah, I was against that, and you were for it. So it's a very clever debating tactic for Hillary Clinton, especially in Michigan, to turn the bailouts into, well, it helped the auto companies. That was the beginning of the auto bailouts, and to try to take away from his strength and turn it into a negative. But at the end of the day, I think he still won that exchange in the beginning there when he said, I'm for saving the American taxpayer, not for the people.
I thought he had good zingers, but for that audience, I think he needed to explain the vote and why he didn't specifically support bailing out the auto industry, or why the fact that maybe the auto industry would be helped a little more if we couldn't import quite so many cars from countries that manipulated their currencies, like the market, or something else, but not just to say, he gets in her face, this is the Wall Street, he makes a point of it, but he didn't make the point to the hometown Michigan audience, what did he do to save the auto industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that part he left out in a way that was, yes, a little mad.
It was noticeable.
Yes, it was noticeable. And you kept waiting for him to answer that part. And he just said it in one small passing thing, like, of course I was for the auto bailout. No, but Bernie, they don't know that. She just painted it like you were against it. Right? So, you gotta be careful on that stuff.
Yeah.
So, on the other hand, though, again, this is part of his theme. She's got friends on Wall Street, and she's gonna look out for them, and I'm gonna look out for you. So, in terms of that controversy, I score that part for Bernie Sanders. Though it went downhill from there, if you ask me, for Sanders. Okay, now, let's go to video 6 here, because I think that this is important. Alright, let's watch video 6. Sarah?
Fracking can lead to environmental pollution, including, but not limited to, the contamination of a water supply. Do you support fracking?
Secretary Clinton?
I don't support it when any locality or any state is against it, number one. I don't support it when the release of methane or contamination of water is present. I don't support it, number three, unless we can require that anybody who fracks has to tell us exactly what chemicals they are using. So by the time we get through all of my conditions, I do not think there will be many places in America where fracking will continue to take place.
Senator Sanders,
my answer is a lot shorter. No, I do not support fracking.
To Secretary Clinton's point, there are a number of Democratic governors in many states who say that fracking can be done safely and that it's helping their economies. Are they wrong?
Yes.
So I love that, but honestly, it didn't have the part I wanted. The part I wanted is when they asked her, "Hey, you just went to meet with the fossil fuel industry lobbyists," and she's like, "I don't think that affected me. I don't know what you're talking about." What do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about. You just had a meeting with them and you took their money. So, and then she immediately went to, I don't remember the line.
She changed the subject.
She changed the subject
so far away, there was still waiting to be able to land a punch on it.
Yeah, it was like, and I'm for education. What? Right. All right, so let's go to another clip.
Here's what I liked about her response I thought was fascinating. She said, yeah, they can frack if they tell us what chemicals they're putting in. Yeah. Like, exactly which poison? Oh, okay. Don't worry about it. But then she said, she basically admitted, we don't even know what the fuck they're injecting into the groundwater that you're drinking.
Although, Sanders did have good, strong, honest answers there, where he's like, yeah, no, I'm not.
No, he had great ones. And he could have even taken it farther. Like, okay, for instance, we talked about, what the gas leak up here in LA, in Puerto Rico. And, does everybody here know that Governor Jerry Brown's sister is on the board of Sempra Energy? Which is why the state, of course, didn't get into forcing them to do something about it, and how all these issues are connected.
Yep. Okay, let's try video 7 here. So, another interesting moment in the debate. Mark Anderson. As a black man in America, if I were born today, I'd have a 1 in 3 chance of ending up in prison in my life. Secretary Clinton, on the campaign trail, You are calling for an end to the era of mass incarceration. But a lot of folks in the black community blame the 1994 crime bill, a bill you supported, for locking up a generation of black men. Given what's happened since 1994, why should black people trust you to get it right this time?
Well, Don, let me say this. Senator Sanders voted for that bill. We both supported it. And I think it's fair to say we did, because back then there was an outcry over the rising crime rate. And people from all communities were asking that action be taken. Now, my husband said at the NAACP last summer that it solved some problems, but it created other problems, and I agree. And one of those problems was, unfortunately, a move to expand the reasons why people would be incarcerated, not just at the federal level, which was what this bill was about, but in states and localities as well. And that's why the very first speech that I gave in this campaign was about criminal justice reform and ending the era of mass incarceration, because I believe absolutely that too many families were broken up, too many communities were adversely affected. So we've got to do a bunch of things. On the criminal justice side, look, we've got to have better policing. That means body cameras. That means ending profiling. That means doing everything we can to make sure there's respect between the community and the police. And when it comes to incarceration, that means we have to limit mandatory minimums. We have to end disparities in treatment.
The question, though, Secretary Clinton, is why should black people trust you this time to get it right? That's the question.
Well, Senator Sanders voted for it as well. Are you going to ask him the same question?
Probably will. Do you think your husband has said that this bill was a mistake? Do you think it was a mistake?
I just said that. He said at the NAACP that there were some aspects of it that worked well. The violence against women provisions have worked well, for example. But other aspects of it were a mistake, and I agree. That's why I'm focused and have a very comprehensive approach toward fixing the criminal justice system, going after systemic racism that stalks the criminal justice system, ending private prisons, ending the incarceration of low-level offenders, and I am committed to doing that.
And Senator Sanders, for your...
So that was a bad line for Hillary Clinton. She had plenty of good lines, but that one was maybe the worst of the... Are you going to ask him too? And he said, yeah, probably, right? And that means I don't want to answer this question. This question is too hard. And then he later asked about super predators and the line that she used there. So great job by Don Lemon by holding her feet to the fire on that. And she had a very poor answer for that too, where she stumbled around a little bit about. No, I didn't mean all the blacks as super predators, but I shouldn't have used that word. Well, then, so I guess you did mean blacks, right? Now, they didn't press further on that. If I was Bernie Sanders, I would have pressed further on that. And then she immediately changed topics to, we should do something, and I'm with President Obama, right? But that was a fail for her, no question.
It wasn't a win for Bernie, though, because he didn't exploit her mistake, which was, I'm against private prison. Oh, you're against him? That's why you just took the guy's money last week. I mean, that was Sanders' chance right there to hammer her, and he didn't.
Yeah, so Jimmy was yelling about that during the live coverage. Why don't you say she just went to meet with private prison lobbyists, right, and take their money? And so you're right, Jimmy. So as much as that was a bad answer and a fail for Hillary Clinton, maybe it's a bigger fail for Bernie Sanders because he couldn't take advantage of it as much as he had the ability.
Well, it's like, to make a sports analogy, it was like the soccer goalie fell down, but the guy kicked it wide of the goal post. It was like you had an open net and you missed it. And that's what I feel like he did. And a lot of people are coming at me on Twitter saying that they felt Bernie won, and that they're saying a lot of online polls say Bernie won. So maybe it's just me, I'm too close to it to be able to be objective, and I wanted Bernie because I could see her vulnerabilities more, and I wanted him to do better, but maybe he actually did better than she did if you don't know the two. If you just came, like if you're an undecided voter, Michigan voter, and you come and you watch it, and you go, well, I think that he's, like you said, he's not with the super PAC, so maybe you're right, Jack. Maybe it was, I'm too close to it, and I'm being nervous Nelly,
Yeah, and I'm often right, so that's probably the right answer.
And I'm not allowed to disagree with you, or you're going to fire me, right?
I love people's theories
People
on that.
say that.
There's a lot of funny theories. Let's pause here for funny theories from this week. That people aren't allowed to disagree with me on this show. Okay.
Whoa. That's not true.
We're allowed to disagree with you?
Yeah. Hey, be cool.
I don't have to laugh at the joke.
Oh man, gotta go. Okay. Funny theory number 2 is I made fun of some Daily Beast reporter. He said, "Hey, grow up, dude." And I was like, "Look, you look like a 12-year-old in your picture, so it's kind of ironic that you would say that." He really does. Look good. And it turns out the guy is Asian, right? And they're like, "Oh, are you making fun of him because he's Asian?" I was like, "No, I'm making fun of him because he looks like a 12-year-old, right?" And like, am I anti-Asian? Well, given the 2 people I love most on the planet are Asian, my kids, probably not. But okay, you can have your theory. But even worse than that theory is, you criticize Hillary Clinton, but and it's probably because she's a woman, but you don't do it to President Obama because he's a guy. Yeah, I don't criticize President Obama. Okay. It's okay. Some people don't watch the show. Okay. So anyway, that's a nice little aside. We can go forward.
Everybody gets criticized. They should. Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
That's why we're progressives, and we use the same. We're consistent in our critiques, right? We don't bend the rules because we like a guy, or unless we hold him to the same standard. And I think that, and it's hard to do sometimes with people you like, but that's what makes us better.
I gladly
that's why
Jimmy in front of an audience. No, I'm just saying. Yeah, we all make mistakes. We all make errors.
Yeah,
we own up to them sometimes.
You know what?
It's not about just making fun of people's mistakes or errors. I mean, that you can forgive someone who they've made a genuine error or a mistake, but it's someone's policy. There's Bernie Sanders getting arrested in the 60s, and at the same time, Hillary Clinton was working for Goldwater, although she said that she had met all these people who changed their mind. And although I can make that criticism, unlike Jake, who was a frickin' Republican in his former life.
Hey, somebody cut his mic. You're not allowed to disagree with me on there.
I never was a former Republican. I was always a Democrat, true blue, and lefty all the time. I was always clear-minded in my politics, right? Because I grew up, I had to wear hand-me-downs and 2 left shoes, and people beat the shit out of me all day. So I'm a perfect liberal, right? So anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
Okay. By the way, maybe the guys who criticize me for on the Asian thing might be right, because my kids are Asian, and I think they look like kids too.
Yes. Oh wait, you're so funny. Yeah.
I love this show. Okay. All right, we go forward. I got one more thing for you guys, and it's going to be clip number 3. So, we thought here that Hillary Clinton had a lot of winning lines, but I didn't give any of those the best line of the night, partly because I think this one we're going to show you is it, also because they were more studied. They were like, okay, I know that if I switch the topic to supporting President Obama or being in favor of education, etc., I'm going to win. Or if I say, hey, on gun control, mass shootings, I mention that line, and it makes it seem like he's pro-mass shootings. But I'm not going to give best line to that because it was a good trick, but that's not really true, right? But I give you all that preface because she did have plenty of good lines tonight. She really did. But I still thought that this was the best line.
While we're on Wall Street, one of us has a super PAC. One of us has raised $15 million from Wall Street for that super PAC. One of us has given speeches on Wall Street for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I kind of think if you get paid a couple of $100,000 for a speech, must be a great speech. I think we should release it and let the American people see what that transcript was.
And I have said, and I will say again, I'll be happy to release anything I have as long as everybody else does too. Because what really is behind that question, Republicans and Democrats, is whether I can stand up to Wall Street. Well, let's have some facts instead of some rhetoric for a change. I went to Wall Street when I was a United States Senator. I told them that they were wrecking the economy. I asked for a moratorium on foreclosures. I asked that we do more to try to prevent what I worried was going to happen. President Obama took more money from Wall Street in the 2008 campaign than anybody ever had. And when it came time to stand up to Wall Street, he passed and signed the toughest regulation since the Great
Senator Sanders, let me just follow up with you.
regulation.
Okay. So that was a great line by Bernie Sanders. He delivers it better on the stump. I've seen it twice this week. He's started saying it this week. He said, $225,000 for a speech. Must have been a fantastic speech. Why don't you share it with everybody so we can all enjoy it, right? In the heat of the debate, he didn't deliver it quite as well, but it still landed the blow that he wanted, which is, come on, man, she's taking $100,000 for hundreds of thousands for speeches. You think it's because they're really great? No. And then her answer of, well, I'll release it whenever everybody else does. And he went on to say later, here, I just released mine. And he said, I don't get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for speeches on Wall Street. And her disingenuous answer of, oh, well, the Republicans haven't released their speeches. Yeah, but we're not in a general election. We're in this primary between you two. One of you takes a lot of money from Wall Street, and the other one doesn't. So when Bernie Sanders pointed that out, I thought that was probably the best line of the debate.
Imagine this, though. Imagine what she said in those speeches, because we will find out those speeches this fall when she's the candidate, and if it's Trump or Cruz, they're going to have a copy of that speech, and they're going to say, "Here, America, here's this person who says they're going to fight for you. Here's who they took the money from. If this is what she told them." And Trump can say that to her. And even Cruz, no doubt, even though his wife worked there and he borrowed money from them, he will still try and use it again.
But pause there for a second, because Wes made a super interesting point that no one else in the media has been talking about. Now, she gave those speeches at Goldman Sachs. Ted Cruz's wife worked at Goldman Sachs. You think she can't find a copy of the speech to leak in a general election matchup? So Bernie Sanders doesn't have access to anybody at Goldman Sachs. He can't leak it. But Ted Cruz and the Republicans do, and they will leak those speeches in the general election, and it will bite her, and then if she's the candidate, all of them.
And you are correct. And let me just change the subject quickly. What we predicted was true. Now, you were talking about how Hillary has to be careful because she might turn off men because she sounds like someone.
Yeah, and when I said he's pointing at her face, I said they're going to make a big deal of the fingers.
So they are making a big deal online out of when he said, "Excuse me, I'm talking." So a lot of women, all these tweets, there's an article over at Blue Nation Review with all these tweets of women saying that, yeah, even my little daughter stood up and took notice of that. She's seen too many men shut up women that way. So this is all about him shutting up women. And I'm sure men do that to women. I've seen it in my own life, the way men treat women. It is. And so that was, even though he shouldn't have done that, he had to be, again, that's another, like, how do you make that mistake? That's an unforced error. He didn't have to do that.
Okay, well,
it was just like,
okay, yeah, I get it. It's bad optics. Okay, but there's two different things that must be mentioned here. Number one, do we think it's because he's disrespectful to women in general? Of course not. He has an enormous track record of being in favor of women's rights. He's got 100 rating from every women's organization almost every year, etc. So that's point one. It has no substantive backing to it. Point number two is Trump shouts down every other Republican. Is that because he's disrespectful to men? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
So in the Republican debates, they're constantly yelling at each other, shouting each other down, and nobody ever says, boy, man, they really must hate men. So
I know you're using logic.
Men shout more.
But this is just about the optics of how it came up. This has nothing to do with the substance. This has nothing to do with the reality or who he really is or what it means. But this is just how it came up in the debate to people who might be undecided, and especially people who are female, who are inclined to back a female because because they felt oppressed. And women are oppressed. We know that. Right, so that's what that is, and he had to be careful of it, and he wasn't. Again, an unforced error, something he could have easily avoided.
And we said right after the debate, obviously, that we were concerned about that. And then the other thing we pointed out, can you get that CNN headline that you showed me a little while ago?
I'll look for it.
Because we said, what's the one takeaway they'll have from tonight's debate, the mainstream media? The interruptions, right? They won't talk about the substance and the super PACs and the lobbyists, or what things Hillary Clinton won on gun control, and she handled the mass incarceration, which could have been a disaster for her. She handled it really well. No, they're going to go for the stylistic issues. Giant headline on CNN talking about, of course, the stylistic issues.
And the headline was at CNN was, "Excuse me, I'm talking." So it was all about, oh, look at exactly right. They always look for that one thing, something that had no substance to it, but that's the thing that makes the headline.
It has an emotional reaction.
Yes.
What they're looking for is the emotions, because they're not selling facts, man. The news doesn't sell facts. TV doesn't sell facts. Newspapers have never sold them. They're selling emotional stories because people pay for emotion.
Yes, the giant headline on top of CNN.com right now is, "Excuse me, I'm talking." That's all it says.
That's it.
That's all it says. So that debate tonight got boiled down to, "Excuse me, I'm talking." The media. What are you going to do with them?
The whole debate. That's what it was.
That's the whole debate. God, they are so devoid of substance, it's painful to look at. There's 1,000 headlines you can come up with, and that might be one of them. But to be the giant banner headline, madness. Okay. All right, so that's all this. I'm going to come back to Maine for 1 second, in a second, but give us. I've been promising it all night, so you got to give it to us.
I thought I did. Like,
no.
Right when the debate was over, I got to do it again.
No.
Do I have to be Hillary Clinton?
No, not why she won the debate, but you're considering voting for Hillary Clinton. So
you are. In the general election, you're fucking right. I am.
No. We all are. But are you thinking about voting for her over Bernie Sanders?
You're talking
in the primary.
You're saying the primary is going to come out here to California.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get the vote.
Yes.
See, this is funny to me that this is even a question.
Here's the thing is, and there's a couple reasons. A, do I like what Bernie Sanders says? Yes, I do. Do I think Wall Street has too much influence? Yes, I do. But at the same time, do I think we're going to somehow instantly change the way the economic system works in the United States? Fuck no, dude. Now it's China couldn't get rid of fucking money. You can't get rid of money, okay? And there's always going to be elite, and there's always going to be people lower. The question is, who's going to be able to, fix it more? And I think the Clintons, have been described by a lot of people as Machiavellian. And you know what? Machiavelli works. So I think she can accomplish stuff. Now when she comes out here, am I going to vote for her? Who fucking knows? Maybe something will change my mind before that. If I was in one of the primary states, Bernie Sanders' early primaries would have definitely had my vote. There's no question.
Well, that's interesting. Why the difference if it's early primary or not?
Because your early primary, you can make a bigger difference with your vote. I mean, look, let's say, hypothetically, Bernie Sanders doesn't win this election. It's about creating a larger movement in the next one. And here's the thing, Bernie Sanders is a great candidate on so many issues, but I feel like he doesn't fully understand the way the economy works, and that in a mad rush to quickly make things equal, we're going to fuck ourselves economically.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Can I rebut this?
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, rebut away. That's just what I think.
Right.
Just from the people I talk to who work in...
I think the way economics works right now is broken.
I think you're right.
Works. I think when people say he doesn't understand how things work, I think he does understand how things work. And that's why he says we need a revolution, because the way things have been working for the last 30 years, if not longer, has been fucking backwards, upside down, and screwing most of the people in the country at the behest of maybe the upper 5%. And this is it's unsustainable, right? And that's why we saw Occupy Wall Street. That's why we're seeing Bernie Sanders winning by 30 and 40 points in states and getting huge. People are done with this, right? By the way, the college debt thing, the banks are going to crash again. It's going to be something else. So I'm telling you right now,
the banks are going to crash again before the election.
Economics. So she said it tonight that she doesn't think the banks right now, if they are too big. She says maybe in the future they might be. We have a litmus test for that, so we can tell. She doesn't see a problem. Bernie says there is a problem. So we need a big change, Wes. So if you want to go along, get along, everything's going to crash again.
No, listen.
So I
don't want to go along, get along. What I want, frankly, is something I'll never get from any candidate in this country. And frankly, I want a kind of anti-democratic ecologic dictatorship for about 8 years to fix the fucking environment because everything else is irrelevant. Everything else is where would you like these fucking chairs on the fucking Titanic?
Talk about climate change?
Yes.
And if we don't address climate change?
If we do not address it immediately with drastic measures that radically change our lives, we're fucked. We're fucked in like 5 to 6 years fucked. Not like everyone's like, oh yeah, 2100. It could be 5 degrees warmer. They told us it was maybe going to be 2 degrees warmer in 2100 just a year or two ago. It was that this fucking year.
Yeah. It is crazy how much faster it's happening than the projections.
You only got to have the harvest not come in once to have a fucking problem.
See, I think, so I obviously disagree with Wes on a couple of fronts, but I think that there is a kernel of an interesting argument there, Jimmy, which is, look, on an issue like the environment, we think Hillary Clinton's pretty good on that, right?
I don't think she'll do what needs to be done either. I don't. There is no candidate out there that's going to do what needs to be done.
And she knows the levers of power, presumably better than Bernie Sanders does. Now that's a mixed blessing, right? The guy who knew the levers of power really well was Dick Cheney. Now he used them in the wrong way, but he was very effective. Knowing those levers of power made a big, big difference in Cheney accomplishing his goals. His goals are not the same as her goals, obviously, and I don't want anybody to mistake what I'm saying as an analogy in that regard. So is he going to know how to fight in a Machiavellian way better to protect the environment and to do the banks?
And this is assuming he wins the general election.
Yes.
We're assuming, hey, he's President Sanders.
Right. So I think that's a legitimate question to ask. I happen to think that first of all, I don't agree with your dictatorship idea.
Let me put it this way. It's got to be something, look, if you take your standpoint, okay, which is every fucking person in both houses of Congress is corrupt. And almost every law they've passed for the last 30 years is a fucking bribe. So why should we pay attention to these laws that they've passed? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And also, look, in World War II, the government took control of national economic policy, energy policy, agricultural policy, everything else, and determined this is how it will work till the war is over. And it should be that way for climate change, and it should be drastic, and it should be severe, and it should be fucking tomorrow that it starts happening.
So, obviously, I wholeheartedly agree on the bribery. We talk about it all the time. I think you're more of a revolutionary than I am.
I am.
Yeah. So
there's no question.
So it's kind of ironic. The guy who is actually much further left in the radical scale is saying maybe Hillary Clinton, depending on when we're voting, etc. But last thing on that, Wes,
I'm not enthusiastic for her, okay? And I can look at the population of the United States, even though she's winning these elections, and you can look at the people going, I'm going to go vote for Hillary Clinton today. Not because I love her, but because I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton today. And you have actual enthusiasm on the Sanders side.
Yeah. So, but my main point of disagreement with the West is that I don't necessarily agree with her intentions. So if you say she's Machiavellian to get the right results, I'd say, okay, I appreciate that. And I'm for playing hardball in politics. No question about that.
You're like Chris Matthews.
he's playing hardball in his own mind. I mean, that's funny. But anyway, that's not a hardball. Anyway, but I don't think that she has the same goals as we do. So she's going to play Machiavellian things to largely agree with the Republicans. So I don't mean on the environment there. I agree with you. I think she's probably going to be pretty good. I think President Obama started out super, super slow, but at the end, the executive orders, etc., started to get us going in the right direction, right? So I think she'll probably follow along in that path. I'm sure Bernie Sanders would have a bigger agenda there, but then you have a real argument about whether you can accomplish that. But on all the financial stuff and the Wall Street and the lobbyists and the donors, I don't think she shares our agenda at all. I think she thinks
doesn't see a problem.
Steady as we go.
Same thing with Barack Obama is what they said about Barack Obama. Like the reason why he doesn't want to do anything to Wall Street is because he doesn't see there's a problem. He doesn't see a problem. You have to see it as a problem if you want to do anything about it. Just like you said with campaign finance, he wants to get the dark money out of campaign finance. He doesn't see a problem with the non-dark money, with the money that we can see it, but she doesn't have a problem with any of that. So if you don't identify it as a problem, you're not going to fix it. And just let's remember the XL pipeline. So everybody talks about how she's going to be great on the environment, and then twist around and become around on the XL pipeline. And I'm sure the TPP deal is a big bad thing for climate change.
Well, and I will tell you, no question it is.
Yeah,
no question.
Actually, now you're getting me to say that she's not as good on the environment as I thought. Right?
No, now you're making me go, man, fuck her. I should be voting for Bernie Sanders. Because I'm a one issue. That's it. The environment. Period. Nothing else.
Right. Well, I think my issue trumps your issue because if we don't get the money out of politics, we'll never fix the environment. But
why? You can fix the environment and still have people make money off fixing it.
No, I'm with you, but that's not where the money is today.
Right.
So that's why we're losing. Look on the TPP thing, right? So that's bad for the environment. So that's why I'm like, maybe she's not in the XL. That's a good point, right? So maybe she doesn't share our intentions on the environment quite the same way.
Fracking was okay.
And she's okay with fracking.
Okay. All right, you're right. You changed my mind.
All right.
Okay. But on TPP, I'm going to set this down in stone for you guys. If Hillary Clinton's the president, she will flip again and totally be in favor of it.
She'll say we changed the things that were wrong with it, and now it's good. So, even though they didn't change anything, right, Ben? That's what's going to happen?
Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, absolutely no question. So I think that she cares about climate change. I think she wants to, get us to a better spot on that. But she doesn't care about it enough to support trade deals, which make a lot of money for people who are in the power structure, who put her in office.
Primary information from. Just like you, when you talk to me about what did you learn when you're in the military? That's where she's getting her financial information from.
Yeah, so the TPP, Bernie Sanders will definitely be against it, and Hillary Clinton will definitely be for it. I mean, she was for it until a couple of minutes ago. And then, literally in the middle of this campaign, when she got so much pressure from Bernie Sanders, she's like, even though she's on the record 45 times supporting it, I meant I'm against TPP too, right? Sure you are. No, she will definitely flip-flop on that. So, anyway, those are your arguments back and forth. I'm not sure that we did a good enough job representing Hillary Clinton's side. I did the best we could, given that we've got someone at best non-committal.
Listen, I'm non-committal about the whole thing. I mean, the present system doesn't work. I mean, that's why Sanders has done well. That's why Trump's doing well. Everybody sees it's not working. But it's like your solutions for fixing it could make things worse. And I'd like to, I like running water. I've said this many times. I like electricity and running water.
Here, I'll be. Let's just try it one time. I'll be Hillary Clinton. You come at me with something, and I'll be Hillary Clinton.
Okay. Well, given how many times that you've not only stated on the record that you were for the TPP, but you fought for the TPP, you instructed everybody at the State Department to make sure that we pass those trade deals. Is it really credible for you to come out now and say you had a last-minute conversion now that you're being challenged by someone more to the left than you?
That's very sexist. And I'm Bernie bro, and you're gonna ask him that? How am I doing?
I thought that when she said it, you're gonna ask him that. That was like that was a full-on panic button. That the right opponent could have gone in for that kill.
That was the equivalent of Bart being picked up on the mic. That was like, holy fuck! Did you really just do that?
Okay. First of all, Hillary Clinton's too smart to say Bernie bro herself. She gets surrogates to imply that. So she's too smart to say Obama boys as they did in 2008. She gets surrogates to say that. And then goes, what, me, I never said anything, right? Okay, we've obviously not done a great job of presenting our positions. Okay, so it's on me. I will get I will get a real Hillary Clinton support.
I will give you her positions. Life right now is pretty good. Under me, it'll be a little bit better.
That is her position.
That is her position. And so it's not very convincing. That's what we think her position is. I'm going to get a real Hillary Clinton advocate. I'm going to try as hard as I can.
I can actually get you one or two really good ones.
All right, great. We'll do that. We'll have that for you guys.
How about Joan Walsh from over at salon.com?
Okay, I don't know that she's going to agree to it, but we'll ask around and we'll do our best. Okay, so Bernie Sanders wins Maine by about 30 points tonight. At least it's mentioned on CNN. Since the debate, by the way, that's on their website. There was one mention. Since the debate, we've happened to have it in one of our monitors here, and CNN has not mentioned Maine at all.
At all. And the headline is, "Excuse me, I'm talking."
Yeah, and
breaking news. Sanders, breaking news. I'm talking. That's breaking news. And by the way, here's from the Sydney. We have fans in Australia. They sent me the Sydney Morning Herald. The headline: "Excuse me, I'm talking. Bernie Sanders snaps at Hillary Clinton." That's the headline in Australia. I gotta say, but also, so that's why I'm talking about. You should have frickin' known better. This is what I'm talking about. It's your responsibility not to make those stupid missteps. You know that's gonna be the headline, and now your message gets lost.
But they're going to write an anti-Bernie Sanders headline almost no matter what.
You don't hand it to him, though.
So, I mean, I don't know. Have they ever written at the end of a debate, have you literally ever seen a single headline saying Bernie Sanders does well? You're probably right. Or any kind of framing that might lead a neutral person.
Me, I'm talking has got to be, I mean, just, that is breaking news. Breaking news. It would be breaking news if, "Excuse me, I'm not talking," and then a bomb went off.
Yeah.
But "Excuse me, I'm not talking" that's not breaking news.
Especially after we just got done with that food fight that was the GOP debate. This is what they're, oh my God, he said, "Excuse me, I'm not talking." Are you, that is right? Comparatively speaking, it's mind-blowing that this is the, oh my God.
Okay. So, at least you know to trust us because we told you it was coming. Before it came, we told you it was going to come, and there it is. The headline's exactly as we predicted for you guys. Okay, so thank you for making this happen, especially the members. And on March 9th, we're actually going to cover one of the debates just for the members. That's all tytnetwork.com/join. To become a member, to make all this possible, definitely watch the March 9th debate with us, all you members out there. And then March 8th, obviously, Tuesday night, Michigan. And that's going to be very, very important. And it's going to be a little nerve-wracking. So come right back here and watch it with us. We're obviously going to have the show every day. We're going to have it tomorrow, of course, and Tuesday as well. At 6 p.m. Eastern is when we start. But the Michigan polls, as soon as they close, will be right here at tytnetwork.com/live. And we'll give you the reality of what's happening. All right, Jimmy West, thank you for joining us tonight. Everybody have a great night. Bye-bye.
Any questions? Bam. Once again, my opinion.
In a Shakespearean speech, for that amount of money, it's her.
Sleep.